From a blind date came a sister who is a CEO. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 476. I agree. Su Weifeng left before Xu Lingling's birthday party was over. ZHU Xiaoxuan left with Su Weifeng and sent him home. Xu Lingling didn't ask for much. Su Weifeng was able to attend her birthday party, which was enough to give her face. He also gave her a gift and danced with her for the first dance. She couldn't ask for too much more. Maybe in the eyes of Lin Zhuangxuan and Qiao Yushan, Su Weifeng's face was not that big, but in the eyes of these children of big families, they knew Su Weifeng's background and power, and clearly understood how big Su Weifeng's face was. "You're back so early?" When they got home, Lin Zhuangxuan was sitting on the sofa with her legs hugged. Su Weifeng didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he sat down next to Lin Zhuangxuan and said, "You'll be back soon. Do you still want me to stay at her house?" Lin Zhuangxuan smiled and said, "I think it's okay." Su Weifeng stretched out his hand and pinched her cheek, saying, You make me feel that you don't care about me." Lin Zhuangxuan leaned her head on Su Weifeng's shoulder and said, "You are so heartless. I do this because I care too much about your safety. Otherwise, do you think I will feel good when I see you getting close to other girls?" Su Weifeng stroked her hair gently and said, "Since it doesn't make you feel good, don't do this again in the future." Lin Zhuangxuan said firmly, "No, if you don't recover, how can you be safe when you go on missions in the future?" Su Weifeng grabbed Lin Zhuangxuan's shoulders with both hands, made her face him, and then said seriously, "Zhuangxuan, if you are doing this for my own good, you shouldn't make such deliberate arrangements. You should know that I'm resistant to your arrangements, and that kind of feelings won't arise at all. Without a foundation of feelings, no matter how close you are to others, even if you go to bed with them, you won't reach that state, and it will be completely ineffective." Lin Zhuangxuan pouted and said, "But you always have to have the opportunity to get in touch before feelings can arise." Su Weifeng said, "Things like feelings are about what comes from the heart. The more deliberate you are, the less you can talk about feelings. No matter what, you can't make such deliberate arrangements in the future." Looking at Su Weifeng's determined eyes and his unquestionable tone, Lin Zhuangxuan bit her lip and finally nodded helplessly, saying, "This is for your own good. Since you don't want to, I won't worry about it in the future." "Well, that's good." Su Weifeng breathed a sigh of relief. Lin Zhuangxuan said again, "But if you do anything with someone, you don't have to worry about me. Just do whatever you want." Su Weifeng nodded, knowing that if he refused again, Lin Zhuangxuan would probably start to help him arrange things again. Lin Zhuangxuan suddenly pouted and said angrily, "You were mean to me just now." Su Weifeng coughed lightly and said, "I'm sorry, my attitude was not good just now." But Lin Zhuangxuan immediately looked at Su Weifeng with the eyes of a little fangirl and said, "It's okay. In fact, you looked really handsome and manly just now. If other women saw you like this, they would definitely fascinate many people." Su Weifeng hugged Lin Zhuangxuan and said, "Did you fascinate me? I fascinated you. I fascinated you to death." Lin Zhuangxuan's eyes were blurred, and she raised her arms and hugged Su Weifeng's neck, and then gave him a sweet kiss. The next day, Su Weifeng came to the gym again at noon. Feng Bao soon came over, but she walked a little limp. Someone greeted her and asked, "Bao, what's wrong with you?" Feng Bao immediately said, "It's okay, I just exercised a little too much." The man asked again, "Why are you working so hard? You're so good now." Feng Bao shook her head repeatedly and said, No, I'm still far from that." "Then is your exercise method wrong? Otherwise, how could you get injured so easily?" Feng Bao laughed and said, "I just didn't exercise well enough." Coming to Su Weifeng, Feng Bao took the initiative to hand Su Weifeng some water. Her arm was a little painful, and she gritted her teeth and said, "Oh my god, this method is really hard to practice. I'm sore all over after only 2 days of practice." Su Weifeng said lightly, "If you can't persist, then give up." "Give up? How is that possible?" Feng Bao shook her head vigorously and said firmly, "I must continue to practice. I'm just worried that this kind of injury will affect my exercise progress. That, what? Su Weifeng didn't expect Feng Bao to be so determined and persistent. At this time, he narrowed his eyes, a little curious. Feng Bao smiled awkwardly at first, then blinked and said, since you have such a good training method, you must have corresponding auxiliary methods. Auxiliary methods? Su Weifeng almost knew what this girl meant, and pretended to be confused. Yes, it's an auxiliary method. Feng Bao said with a smile. Anyone who practices this will get injured at the beginning. If there is no matching recovery method, it will definitely take a while to stop practicing again. This is definitely a problem. Su Weifeng said lightly. Yes, there is, but I can't use it on you. Why? Why can't you use it on me? Feng Bao suddenly widened her eyes, but felt that there was something wrong with her attitude, and immediately said, I'm not questioning you, but what's wrong with me? Su Weifeng said lightly, men and women should not be intimate. This is very inconvenient. Is that so? Feng Bao understood immediately, and an embarrassed look appeared on her face. She tentatively said, is this method troublesome? Is there anyone who can replace it? Or can you teach me myself? Su Weifeng still had a flat tone and said, you can't exert your strength by yourself, and your strength is not enough, so the effect is basically useless. That's right, if this method is simple, then I'm afraid anyone can be very powerful. Feng Bao muttered, and then sat on the ground next to him with some depression. Su Weifeng ignored her, and continued to do his own thing. After only 1 or 2 minutes, Feng Bao suddenly jumped up. The movement was too violent, and the injured muscles were pulled so hard that it hurt so much, that she grimaced and cried out in pain. Su Weifeng, I've made up my mind. Enduring the pain, Feng Bao gritted her teeth, with a heroic look, staring at Su Weifeng with her eyes, and squeezed out a few words from between her teeth. I agree. You agree. What did you agree to? Su Weifeng asked calmly without even looking at her. Feng Bao raised her chin and said, I said, I agree to let you help me recover. Chapter 477 Torturing Feng Bao. Are you sure? Su Weifeng's mouth curled up, revealing a slightly weird smile. This smile made Feng Bao feel a little scared, but she still stiffened her neck and said fearlessly, I'm sure. Then she whispered, anyway, you have taken advantage of me, and so many colleagues have seen it. It's nothing to suffer a little loss. Su Weifeng naturally heard her words, but he didn't say anything about it. He just said lightly, then find a closed room. Seal. Seal. Feng Bao's mouth twitched violently, and she stuttered all of a sudden, and she was panicking. Su Weifeng said lightly, if you want to do it in this kind of place, it's up to you. No. Feng Bao shouted immediately. Even if she let this guy take advantage of her, she couldn't do it in public. The one time in the bar was enough to embarrass her for the rest of her life, and she didn't want it to happen again. Feng Bao really had faith in this gym, and soon the two entered a closed room. After closing the door and locking it from the inside, Feng Bao turned around and said to Su Weifeng with gritted teeth, come on. Lie down. Su Weifeng pointed to the mat. Feng Bao's mouth twitched again, and then she clenched her fists and lay down on the mat. Come on. I'm going all out. Feng Bao stretched out her arms and legs, and stretched them out in a big letter shape. Su Weifeng almost laughed at Feng Bao's appearance, but he quickly held back, and then walked directly to her side, looking down at her, nodded, and looked very appreciative. Feng Bao was embarrassed and annoyed at this time. This bastard, if you want to take advantage, just take it. I'm going all out, and you're still here to watch slowly, this perverted thing. Su Weifeng finally squatted down, and then put his hand directly on Feng Bao's leg. Feng Bao's leg muscles suddenly tensed. Relax. Su Weifeng glared. Feng Bao grinned and muttered to herself, how can I relax, when you are touching me? Seeing that Feng Bao did not relax, Su Weifeng directly grabbed Feng Bao's legs, and lifted them up with force. Ah! Feng Bao screamed at the top of her lungs. Su Weifeng said impatiently, why are you screaming? Just bear with it. It hurts. It hurts. Feng Bao gasped. Su Weifeng directly let go of Feng Bao's legs and said, nonsense, you have to bear with it even if it hurts. This is to completely stretch your muscles, to achieve a better effect. but you can regret it now, otherwise I won't stop in a while. What you meant just now was to ask me if I can bear it? Feng Bao sat up, rubbing her legs hard, gritting her teeth and grinning. Of course, what do you think? Su Weifeng narrowed his eyes and said, do you think I want to take advantage of you? He glanced at Feng Bao again and said, your figure is just average. I'm really not interested. Average. Feng Bao's mouth twitched. She never wanted to be proud of her appearance and figure, but she also knew that with such appearance and figure, she would definitely be the object of envy of countless women. But in Su Weifeng's mouth, she was only average, which made her very unconvinced. She had seen Lin Zhuangxuan before, and her figure was obviously average. Yes, she was the real average. This messy thought only flashed through her mind for a moment. The most important thing for Feng Bao was to completely relax. Su Weifeng was not here to take advantage of her, but it was just pain. What could she not endure? She immediately said very simply, I can endure it. Come on. Okay. Su Weifeng nodded, and then a very ferocious smile appeared on his face. Feng Bao felt a little creepy, but she still kept silent. Feng Bao, never knew what fear was. No. Feng Bao was very confident now. She believed that she could handle such a thing. But soon, Feng Bao's confidence was becoming less and less. She deeply suspected that Su Weifeng was now retaliating against her. She felt that her muscles were being torn apart inch by inch, and her bones were dislocated and connected, and then pulled apart again. It was the first time that Feng Bao felt that the days were like years. She really hoped that Su Weifeng would stop immediately, but Su Weifeng's movements just kept on going. After an unknown amount of time, Feng Bao felt that she was about to faint, and Su Weifeng's movements finally stopped. It's alright. Su Weifeng said lightly. Feng Bao let out a long breath, and the whole person collapsed at once. She felt that she had no strength in her body, and even her fingertips could not move. The floor mat was already wet with her sweat, and it all turned into a stream and flowed to the side. At this time, Su Weifeng secretly admired Feng Bao in his heart. Even if it was his dragon roar, not every team member could bear it. Feng Bao, a woman who had only received general combat training, could actually survive. This definitely requires extremely strong endurance and super willpower. However, Su Weifeng did not praise her, but said lightly, it's only halfway done now, and there will be more uncomfortable things to come. What else? Feng Bao's lips moved, and then twitched again, and said in a hoarse voice, come on, as long as you don't kill me. Su Weifeng chuckled and said, don't worry about this, I won't die, but I will definitely be skinned. Feng Bao said with despair, then come on. Feng Bao was ready to be tortured again. But when Su Weifeng's hand fell on her again, although the pain was still there, it was not so strong. After a while, it was no longer painful. Instead, the painful areas became burning hot, as if the injured muscle cells inside were growing again. As the heat became stronger, her spirit became better and better. Her body's perception ability was fully restored, and her mind was no longer just thinking about the pain in her body. She finally had extra energy to think about other things. Her eyes turned to Su Weifeng's face, and she saw sweat on his face. Not only his face, but also his arms were covered with a layer of fine sweat beads, which clearly showed that he had consumed a lot of energy. At this time, Feng Bao didn't understand that Su Weifeng's help this time was not as simple as just moving his hands. A feeling of gratitude slowly welled up in her heart, getting stronger and stronger. Chapter 478, Benefits. Su Weifeng really put in a lot of effort this time. Except for Long Zio's team members, Su Weifeng rarely helps others like this. He didn't really want to do this at the beginning. He just wanted to give Feng Bao some benefits and help her improve a little. But Feng Bao's persistence and perseverance made him change his mind temporarily and put in such effort. When it was all over, Su Weifeng was somewhat exhausted. He sat on the ground, panting heavily, and his clothes were already soaked with sweat. Feng Bao didn't have much strength at this time. She was still in pain, but it was no longer unbearable. She looked at Su Weifeng with burning eyes and said, thank you. Su Weifeng looked at Feng Bao and said unsatisfiedly, just a thank you? Feng Bao hesitated for a moment, suddenly leaned over, and kissed Su Weifeng on the face. This was too sudden. Su Weifeng was not prepared at all, and his body was really tired, so Feng Bao succeeded. Oh my god, what are you doing? Taking advantage of me? Su Weifeng shouted immediately. Seeing the aggrieved expression on Su Weifeng's face, Feng Bao was stunned for a moment, and didn't know how to respond to Su Weifeng's words. For a girl like her to kiss Su Weifeng, isn't that a great reward? Why does Su Weifeng look like he's been violated? After a long while, he stammered, "No, I'm not. I just want to express my gratitude." Su Weifeng immediately glared and said, "Is there anyone who expresses gratitude like you? Are you still a policeman? If I walk on the street and deliberately drop something, and let a beautiful woman pick it up, I will kiss her, and say that this is to express gratitude? This? Of course not." Feng Bao shook her head immediately. Su Weifeng said righteously, "That's right. Don't tell me that what's obscene is only directed at women. Now men and women are equal, and men are also victims of violation. As a policeman, you should not do such things." Feng Bao was speechless, and Su Weifeng was ashamed. She said, "I'm sorry, but you asked me just now. Just say thank you and it's over. I subconsciously thought you wanted to do this, and I misunderstood. Oh my god, you really know how to take advantage. You want to fool me with a kiss." Su Weifeng leaned over and kissed Feng Bao on the face with a disgusted expression and said, "I'm returning it to you now. Now we don't owe each other anything." Feng Bao touched her face, looking a little amused, and said, "What do you want? What do you want?" Su Weifeng snorted and said, "I've helped you so much, don't you have to give me some benefits?" "Benefits? What benefits do you want?" Feng Bao suddenly laughed. "Well." Su Weifeng twisted his fingers and said, "I'm exhausted. You need to give me some nutrition money." "You want money?" Feng Bao's eyes widened. Su Weifeng smiled and said, "Don't talk so vulgarly. I just want nutrition money. You are the CEO of a company. You still need money?" Feng Bao made Su Weifeng even more confused. Su Weifeng sighed and said, "There's nothing I can do. The money is limited, and I can't spend it casually. A man should always have some pocket money, otherwise why should I go to so much trouble to help you?" Feng Bao then looked bitter and said, "Last time you ordered so many things in the bar, I didn't have half a month's salary. Now I don't have much money." Su Weifeng rolled his eyes and said, "Oh my god, is it? Are you thinking that I've worked in vain?" Feng Bao hurriedly said, No, I just wanted to tell you that I'm a bit short of money now. I will give it to you when I get my salary next month. In addition, I will also get some bonuses from major cases. I will keep some for myself and give you the rest. What do you think? That's about right." Su Weifeng nodded with satisfaction. Feng Bao breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Is that all you want? I'm not greedy, so it's fine if it's about right. But I warn you, don't tell my girlfriend. She comes here every now and then, and you'll get to know her sooner or later." Feng Bao said immediately, No, I know that men hide their own money. Some of my colleagues in the unit also hide some." Su Weifeng nodded repeatedly and said, "That's about right, and I didn't help you in vain." He did this because he didn't want Feng Bao to feel too grateful and just wanted to make this matter seem more ordinary. Feng Bao moved her body and felt that her body functions had recovered a little, so she said, "What should I do now?" Su Weifeng said, "Just keep practicing according to what I gave you, and it won't be so difficult for you in the future, but it won't be easy either." Feng Bao waved her fist vigorously and said, "Okay, I will never give up." When she threw this punch, an indescribable sense of power suddenly came from her arm and fist. Feng Bao even felt that her punch was enough to knock a strong man unconscious. But she felt tired again. She knew that she had consumed too much energy just now and had not recovered completely. If she wanted to know how big the change was, she would have to wait until her physical strength was fully recovered. She opened the door. Suddenly, 6 or 7 people lost their balance and fell in. Feng Bao's face turned black and she said, "What are you doing?" Those people all laughed dryly and looked at Su Weifeng and Feng Bao. Feng Bao knew what they were thinking when she saw their expressions. She glared at them and said, "Let's train here. Don't think about it. No, no, we are not thinking about it. Those people got up, watched Su Weifeng and Feng Bao leave, and then ran to the mat. Damn, the fight between these two is really intense. That's right, how much sweat must have been shed. That's right, when they went out just now, they looked like they were about to collapse, you can imagine. But who says it must be sweat? Maybe it's he. Maybe our Feng Bao has a special body and can do that. One guy blinked obscenely. The other guys immediately understood and laughed. What can I do? Feng Bao's voice came from the door. These guys were so scared that they almost lost their souls. They made a few excuses and then slipped out. Feng Bao was still confused and didn't understand what these guys meant. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 479 Tit for Tat. When Su Weifeng came to the gym again in the evening, Feng Bao did not come. After the situation at noon today, Feng Bao needed 2 days of rest to recover. But just after training for a while, a man walked in, glanced at Su Weifeng, and immediately focused his eyes on him. The guy walked straight in front of Su Weifeng, squinted at Su Weifeng, and said, "What a coincidence, I didn't expect to meet you here." It turned out to be Jin Yuhu. Su Weifeng did not stop his movements and said lightly, "I really don't want to see you." Jin Yuhu stood beside Su Weifeng, watching Su Weifeng's movements with interest, and said, "You really surprised me a little. My interest in you has increased all of a sudden." Su Weifeng still said calmly, "Sorry, you found the wrong person. I only like beautiful women." The implication of this sentence is to call Jin Yuhu a glass. Ha. Jin Yuhu was not angry at this time, and said, interesting. Yang Cheng actually has a person like you. It seems that I will not be so lonely." Su Weifeng glanced at him, and his tone suddenly turned cold, saying, "You should do whatever you need to do, and it is best not to disturb me. Are you warning me?" Jin Yuhu narrowed his eyes, but the eyes that came out of the slit were indescribably sharp. No matter what Jin Yuhu said, Su Weifeng still had the attitude of not taking Jin Yuhu seriously, and said, "If you think so, it's nothing." Jin Yuhu suddenly laughed, and then suddenly lowered his voice and said, "Do you think that you have close cooperation with the Shu family and the ZHU family, so you can ignore anyone in Yangcheng?" Su Weifeng ignored him. This made Jin Yuhu feel uncomfortable, like a heavy punch hitting cotton. With a snort, Jin Yuhu said in a deep voice, "I don't know how you got in touch with the two families, and how you got them to help you so much, but in any case, these are just your external forces, not your real strength. In the face of interests and dangers, I believe that this kind of cooperation is simply vulnerable." Seeing that Su Weifeng still didn't say anything, Jin Yuhu frowned and said, "I'm different from you. I'm a member of the Jin family. I'm the head of the Jin family. Everything in the Jin family is loyal to me and will be used by me. In this regard, you are completely incomparable to me." Su Weifeng just glanced at him and then continued to do his own actions. Jin Yuhu's face completely sank. He said so much, but Su Weifeng didn't say a word. This was completely contempt for him and ignored him. Su Weifeng stopped at this time, stood up and wiped the sweat off his face, and said, "Whether it's the Shu family or the ZHU family, you don't have to take it to heart. I just remind you not to touch my relatives and friends." Jin Yuhu sneered and said, "Are you scared?" Su Weifeng met Jin Yuhu's gaze, nodded slowly, and said, "I'm really scared. I don't want my family and friends to be hurt because of me, even if it makes them feel unhappy." Jin Yuhu suddenly laughed and said, "That's right, but I don't think the same as you. I like to watch me torture the family and friends of my enemies, and then leave them helpless. It's really an indescribable pleasure." Su Weifeng's face also sank, and their eyes intertwined and touched each other, and it seemed that sparks were blooming. After more than 10 seconds, Jin Yuhu actually felt that the pressure was getting greater and greater, and he even dared not to look Su Weifeng in the eye. This made him feel quite annoyed. He had been a mercenary for all these years, and had gone through all kinds of life and death tests. He was no longer the boy who only knew how to use his family's power to do things recklessly, but a general who could truly control the overall situation. He thought that, when he returned to Yangcheng this time, everything would be under his control and there would be no more opponents in Yangcheng. However, that kind of confidence actually weakened a lot when facing Su Weifeng. This was a deep blow to him. Young Master Jin. Several people hurriedly walked in and shouted excitedly when they saw Jin Yuhu. Jin Yuhu quickly took the opportunity to turn his head away so that at least he would not be embarrassed. He was somewhat fortunate that someone came to rescue him. Young Master Jin, it's too boring here. There are several beauties over there. Let's go over and take a look. They are very pretty. Not only are their faces pretty, but their bodies are also quite good. But it seems that the most beautiful girl here didn't come today. It's a bit of a pity. Jin Yuhu nodded, then turned his head and looked at Su Weifeng again. After a sneer, he walked out directly. Su Weifeng frowned secretly. It seemed that he had interrupted Jin Yuhu's rhythm and broke Jin Yuhu's confidence in the conversation with him just now. But judging from the other party's reaction, this is also a difficult opponent. If this happened abroad, Su Weifeng would probably kill Jin Yuhu directly. However, in China, Su Weifeng also knew that he had to be subject to too many constraints, and these constraints were the capital for Jin Yuhu to be rampant, so the next struggle with Jin Yuhu would definitely be a bit tricky. This guy had better not do anything to his parents and friends, otherwise, even if Su Weifeng didn't do it himself, he still had a way to make Jin Yuhu taste what it was like to regret. You haven't finished practicing yet. Lin Zhuangxuan appeared at the door with a sweet smile on her face. Su Weifeng smiled and said, it's almost time. I'm going to take a shower now. Lin Zhuangxuan pushed Su Weifeng and said, why don't you go quickly? There are guests waiting for us at home. Guests? What guests? Su Weifeng asked puzzledly. You'll know when you get back. I'll wait for you downstairs. Su Weifeng was taking a shower while thinking about what kind of guests could be waiting at home. He soon guessed that the most likely guests who could be waiting at home were Sun Yumeng and Zhao Xiaoshu. Because if it was any other guests, Lin Zhuangxuan would not let them wait at home so casually. At least she would tell him who they were. On the way home, Su Weifeng deliberately asked, but Lin Zhuangxuan pretended to be mysterious and didn't say anything. When he got home, looking at the two pairs of shoes on the insole at the door, Su Weifeng knew that his guess was not wrong. It's just, what on earth did Lin Zhuangxuan bring these two girls here for? This is a bit confusing. Chapter 480, Natural and Casual. Brother Su, Sister Zhuangxuan, you're back. Zhao Xiaoshu poked his head out of the kitchen, with an excited smile on his face, and shouted crisply. Lin Zhuangxuan said with a smile, yes, it seems that we are back a little early. Zhao Xiaoshu immediately said, not early, just right. There is only one dish left. You go wash your hands and change your clothes, and we can eat when you come down. Su Weifeng deliberately seemed a little helpless and said, Zhuangxuan, you said there are guests at home. It turns out to be Xiaoshu and Yumeng. Lin Zhuangxuan smiled proudly and said, yes, I have an idea to talk to them tonight. It's comfortable at home, so I asked them to come. Su Weifeng said, it seems a bit embarrassing to let them work overtime and ask someone to cook for us. Zhao Xiaoshu immediately smiled sweetly and said, Sister Yumeng and I got off work early and we just had nothing to do, so we made something. It's also our duty. Lin Zhuangxuan pulled Su Weifeng and said angrily, why are you so troublesome? Go upstairs and change clothes. Su Weifeng and Lin Zhuangxuan went upstairs, and while changing clothes, Su Weifeng said with a wry smile, Zhuangxuan, don't worry about it. Lin Zhuangxuan threw the clothes she took off directly on Su Weifeng's face, chuckled, and said, I arranged two beautiful girls to accompany you, but you are still not happy. Where can I find a man like you? Su Weifeng took the clothes off his face, then held his nose again, and said, it smells so good, just having you is enough. Lin Zhuangxuan didn't even put on her pajamas, but came directly to Su Weifeng who was sitting on the bed, and said, I just like you to coax me. Su Weifeng hugged Lin Zhuangxuan, kissed her gently, and said, don't seduce me now. If we suddenly enter the realm, we will not go down, and it will be embarrassing for them to see us when they come up again. Lin Zhuangxuan quickly pushed Su Weifeng away and said angrily, "That makes sense." Lin Zhuangxuan became more and more casual and bold in front of Su Weifeng. The two had not entered that realm for several days, so it was hard to say when they suddenly entered it. After simply changing clothes, the two came downstairs. 4 dishes and a soup were already on the table. Zhao Xiaoshu and Sun Yumeng were carrying their bowls to the table. "Thank you for your hard work." Lin Zhuangxuan was polite, then sniffed and said, "Not bad, not bad. It smells really good. Yumeng's cooking skills are great." Sun Yumeng hurriedly said, "Thank you, Sister Zhuangxuan, for the compliment. I just made 2 dishes casually." Lin Zhuangxuan chuckled and said, "These are so delicious just by cooking casually. When will you cook a few dishes for us with your heart? They will be so delicious that they will bite our tongues." Sun Yumeng immediately said in embarrassment, "Sister Zhuangxuan, I didn't mean that." Su Weifeng chuckled and said, "Yumeng, Zhuangxuan is just joking with you. Come and eat." Sun Yumeng was relieved of the embarrassment, and the 4 of them sat down and started eating together. After dinner, Lin Zhuangxuan really dragged Zhao Xiaoshu and Sun Yumeng to study the script together. Su Weifeng has not been involved in script matters recently. At the beginning, he felt it was interesting, but after a long time, he knew that he was not suitable for this. Professional things should be done by professionals. It was okay for him to help come up with ideas occasionally, but he could not help with other things. Seeing that they were serious, Su Weifeng wanted to go back to the bedroom. Lin Zhuangxuan stopped him and said, "Hey, we are working hard here. You have to serve us. Bring us some tea, pour some water, and get some fruits." Sun Yumeng got up and said, No, I can do these." Lin Zhuangxuan pulled Sun Yumeng to sit down and said, "We are all busy, and he is the only idle person. If we don't let him do it, who else can do it? If you do these messy things, can you still concentrate on thinking about the script?" Sun Yumeng was speechless for a moment. What Lin Zhuangxuan said did make sense. Su Weifeng smiled and said, "I thought I was useless and was afraid to disturb you. Since I'm still useful, I will serve you beautiful ladies who have worked so hard." Su Weifeng first made tea for the 3 of them, then washed some fruits, cut them and put them on a plate, and brought them over. Lin Zhuangxuan and the other 3 were very engaged at this time, discussing how the plot should be laid out, and how the characters should be set. Su Weifeng did not disturb them, but put the fruit platter in the middle of the 3 of them, and then sat next to Lin Zhuangxuan. Sun Yumeng and Zhao Xiaoshu looked at Su Weifeng. At first, they were a little distracted, but as the discussion became more and more in-depth, the 2 really ignored Su Weifeng's existence and put all their thoughts into the plot. After Lin Zhuangxuan expressed her thoughts, her mouth was a little dry, so she picked up a piece of fruit with a toothpick and took a bite. But she immediately thought of something she hadn't thought of just now. At this time, Sun Yumeng had already started to talk about her thoughts. She didn't want to disturb her, so she quickly took out her phone to take notes and handed the fruit to Su Weifeng. At this time, Su Weifeng had to be a qualified boyfriend. After taking it, he fed it directly to Lin Zhuangxuan. For Lin Zhuangxuan, such an action was naturally not taken seriously at all, and she just opened her mouth and ate it casually. Su Weifeng sat on the side, listening to the discussion of the 3 people. Although he did not interrupt, he felt that the story the 3 people thought of was really interesting, and he listened more and more seriously. When several people are very serious, some actions may be unconscious. When Sun Yumeng took a bite of the fruit, she was accidentally stabbed by a toothpick. The pain made her suddenly realize a problem. It seems that the fruit she just ate was fed to her by Su Weifeng. Realizing this problem, she was a little flustered. She secretly looked at Lin Zhuangxuan and found that Lin Zhuangxuan was frowning, which scared her face and turned pale. "I feel that this plot is still not enough in contradictions and conflicts, and it is somewhat bland. What do you think?" But Lin Zhuangxuan was talking about the plot problem of the script. Zhao Xiaoshu tilted his head, took a piece of fruit that Su Weifeng had sent over, and said vaguely, "I do feel that way, but I haven't thought of a better plot to replace this one yet." Lin Zhuangxuan opened her mouth, and Su Weifeng quickly handed over a piece of melon. Looking at everything in front of her, it was also natural and casual, which made Sun Yumeng a little confused. What was going on? Was Lin Zhuangxuan too careless, or was it really as Zhao Ziaoshu said? Su Weifeng once again handed the fruit to Sun Yumeng's mouth. Sun Yumeng subconsciously shook her head and said with a red face, "No, no, I can do it myself." Lin Zhuangxuan and Zhao Ziaoshu immediately looked at her with a weird look, which made Sun Yumeng even more speechless. Why did she behave like she had done something wrong? Chapter 481, The Unspeakable Secret. The piece of fruit in front of Sun Yumeng made her feel so terrible at this moment. She didn't know whether she should reach out to take it or just open her mouth and continue eating. At this time, Lin Zhuangxuan burst out laughing and said, "Yumeng, you don't have to be so careful. I'm not that petty. You have recognized Weifeng as your brother, so it's nothing great for a brother to feed his sister a few bites of fruit. Besides, we are all working hard now. It's natural for him to serve us as an idle person." Sun Yumeng smiled awkwardly and said, "Yes, but there are some things we must pay attention to. If we are too casual, it will cause some rumors and gossip, which will affect Brother Su and Sister Zhuangxuan." Lin Zhuangxuan also showed an appreciative look on his face and said, "Yumeng is really thoughtful. We do need to be careful outside, but this is at home, and no one can see us, so just be casual." Sun Yumeng was speechless and said with a red face, but, Lin Zhuangxuan sighed lightly and said, "We are the only few people who know about your brother Su's situation. For this reason, we are also friends. I really don't mind just spending such a short time together. After all, your brother Su is not mine." Zhao Ziaoshu immediately said excitedly, "Sister Zhuangxuan, this. Lin Zhuangxuan chuckled and said, "Seeing you are excited and happy, this has fulfilled your wish, right?" Zhao Ziaoshu immediately blushed with embarrassment, twisting the corner of her clothes and said, "Sister Zhuangxuan, I don't have any other ideas. I just." Lin Zhuangxuan chuckled again and said, "No need to explain. If you want to fulfill your wish, it depends on your ability. Someone is a piece of wood and is not so easily moved." Zhao Ziaoshu and Sun Yumeng both looked at Su Weifeng. Su Weifeng rolled his eyes at Lin Zhuangxuan. Although he knew that Lin Zhuangxuan would make this matter clear sooner or later, he still didn't expect Lin Zhuangxuan to make it clear so soon. Fortunately, Lin Zhuangxuan did not directly tell the real reason. This should be Lin Zhuangxuan's consideration. If they knew the reason, Zhao Ziaoshu and Sun Yumeng would have the idea of voluntarily devoting themselves. At that time, Su Weifeng would not be able to have that kind of emotion, and there would be no recovery effect. Lin Zhuangxuan suddenly stood up and said, "Oh, my stomach is a little uncomfortable. I'm going to the bathroom first. You guys can chat first." Then she went upstairs quickly. There is also a bathroom on the first floor. Lin Zhuangxuan went upstairs at this time, obviously letting Su Weifeng handle the next thing directly. Whether to say it or not, it is up to Su Weifeng to decide. The scene suddenly became a little weird. Sun Yumeng glanced at Su Weifeng, then lowered her head with a red face, while Zhao Ziaoshu pursed her lips. Her eyes were a little hot, but still a little nervous. She opened her mouth several times, wanting to ask, but didn't know how to say it. Su Weifeng was really a little bit amused at this time, but he was most moved in his heart. Lin Zhuangxuan's feelings for him were really beyond words. Loving someone would make one selfish. For him, Lin Zhuangxuan could put aside her selfishness and do such a thing. This could only mean that her love for him was as deep as the sea. After a light cough, Su Weifeng could only say, "Zhuangxuan is joking with you. Don't worry about it." Zhao Ziaoshu grabbed Su Weifeng's arm and said anxiously, "Brother Su, I can feel that Sister Zhuangxuan is not joking. What is going on? Can you tell us?" Sun Yumeng raised her head, and there was clearly a strong desire for the unknown in her eyes, but when she met Su Weifeng's eyes, she immediately lowered her head. Su Weifeng was a little confused. Although Zhao Ziaoshu and Sun Yumeng were not the kind of girls with complicated minds, it did not mean that they were not smart. In fact, they were all very smart. In addition, writing novels and scripts also made them observe characters more carefully. Lin Zhuangxuan's performance was too obvious, and it was too difficult to cover it up. Zhao Ziaoshu bit his lip, then whispered, "Brother Su, do you have any unspeakable secrets?" Su Weifeng sighed and said, "Yes, there are indeed some special reasons." "Oh, really?" Zhao Ziaoshu's eyes widened immediately. Sun Yumeng also raised her head and stared at Su Weifeng. Her face suddenly flushed. Su Weifeng nodded and said, of course it's true. But it felt that this reason was really hard to say, and it seemed that it shouldn't be said out loud. Zhao Xiaoshu straightened his chest and said, Brother Su, I'm willing. No matter when, as long as you need it, I will definitely cooperate. Su Weifeng widened his eyes, looked at Zhao Xiaoshu, and said, did Zhuang Xuan tell you? No, but I have guessed it. I think I should be fine. If you are worried, I will go to the hospital for a checkup tomorrow. And not only me, but also Sister Yumeng. One of us can do it. Go to the hospital? Su Weifeng was a little confused. Zhao Xiaoshu nodded seriously and said, yes, now the hospital can completely check it out. When the time comes, if you are willing, let either of us give birth to a child for you. It's fine. Even if you can't be with us in the future, I'm willing to raise a child for you. Child. Su Weifeng suddenly screamed out. This voice was so loud that it scared Sun Yumeng and Zhao Xiaoshu. Then looking at Su Weifeng's expression, they suddenly understood that what Zhao Xiaoshu said seemed to be different from what Su Weifeng wanted to say. Did Xiaoshu say it wrong? Sun Yumeng asked cautiously. Su Weifeng said with a smile, of course I said it wrong. You don't think Zhuang Xuan can't give birth, and she wants you to help me give birth to a child, right? Isn't it? Zhao Xiaoshu asked back with some embarrassment. Su Weifeng frowned and said, of course not. How is that possible? You two writers have such rich plots in your brains. Sun Yumeng breathed a sigh of relief and said, I said, Sister Zhuang Xuan is in good health. How could she not have children? Zhao Xiaoshu was more concerned about another question at this time, and stammered, if that's not the case, then why did Sister Zhuang Xuan, why did she let us? Sun Yumeng's focus was completely different from Zhao Xiaoshu's. She was extremely nervous at this time and asked anxiously, then Brother Su, what is your secret? Chapter 482 Explain clearly. Zhao Xiaoshu is more looking forward to being with Su Weifeng, so she is concerned about while and Zhuang Xuan did this, so that she can decide what to do in the future. Sun Yumeng is more concerned about Su Weifeng himself, and she is worried about whether Su Weifeng has any problems. This may not seem to be a big difference, but it can make Su Weifeng feel that Sun Yumeng still cares about him more than Zhao Xiaoshu. This may be because the two have different ideas about the people they like. Zhao Xiaoshu likes Su Weifeng, so she thinks about being with Su Weifeng. As long as she can be with Su Weifeng, nothing else matters. But Sun Yumeng's love for Su Weifeng seems to be deeper and more advanced. She only hopes that Su Weifeng can be happy. As long as Su Weifeng is happy, she will be extremely happy. Her love is not asking for it, but a completely selfless dedication. Su Weifeng looked at Sun Yumeng, then at Zhao Xiaoshu, and scratched his head, trying to make up a reason, but being stared at by the expectant eyes of the two, he was a little difficult to say. After hesitating for a while, he finally said, I'm really sorry, I can't tell you, but don't worry, I'm fine, and you don't need to understand the reason. Sun Yumeng was even more worried, frowning even more, and said, Brother Su, I may not know the reason, but can you tell me if it has something to do with your body? Su Weifeng looked at Sun Yumeng in surprise. How could this girl be so smart and guess it right at once? Sun Yumeng reached out and grabbed Su Weifeng's arm, saying, Brother Su, what's wrong with your body? If you need me, I will agree to anything you ask me to do. Zhao Xiaoshu also said nervously, Brother Su, what's going on? At first, she only wanted to be with Su Weifeng, but now, she also became nervous. Su Weifeng smiled bitterly, took a deep breath, and said, you are so smart. Okay, then I will tell you. Su Weifeng told the two about his special way of recovery. Zhao Xiaoshu and Sun Yumeng were both dumbfounded. Even though they wrote novels and scripts, they felt that this method was a bit absurd. Zhao Xiaoshu was the first to react. He patted his chest and said, Brother Su, as long as it's for your injury, I have absolutely no problem. I'm willing. Sun Yumeng bit her lip and didn't say anything, but nodded heavily. If it was something else, Sun Yumeng really wouldn't agree. Liking and loving are two different things, but you can't be selfish just because of love and make Su Weifeng embarrassed, so she would rather watch Su Weifeng from a distance. but this involves Su Weifeng's physical recovery and whether the strongest warrior of a country can recover to the peak to protect the country. From this perspective, Sun Yumeng has no reason to refuse. Su Weifeng coughed lightly and said gratefully, "Thank you, but this matter is not that simple. What else do you need? Go to bed directly?" Zhao Xiaoshu bit his lip and said, "I have no problem." Puff. A chuckle came from the stairs. Then Lin Zhuangxuan walked downstairs and said with a smile, "If it is really that simple, it would be easy." Zhao Xiaoshu and Sun Yumeng were a little embarrassed in front of Lin Zhuangxuan, but this kind of embarrassment was obviously not as scary as before. It was different. After knowing the whole story, Lin Zhuangxuan put away his smile and said seriously, "In addition to physical contact, the most important way for her to recover is to be emotional. He must truly fall in love with you. This is especially important. If he doesn't love you, even if you go to bed every day, it probably won't have any effect." Zhao Xiaoshu grinned and said, "It has to be this way." Sun Yumeng's eyes lit up, and her face suddenly became much more relaxed. "Yumeng, what are you doing?" Lin Zhuangxuan saw the change in Sun Yumeng's expression and asked with some confusion. Sun Yumeng's face turned red, and she said softly, "To be honest, if Big Brother Su's recovery only requires intimacy with a woman, then I would feel a little uncomfortable. But, if there is a requirement of mutual affection, then I would feel a lot more relaxed." Zhao Xiaoshu pouted and said, "Sister Yumeng, you are a little pretentious." Sun Yumeng shook her head gently and said seriously, "Maybe, in my mind, intimacy between men and women is very awkward if there is no love." Lin Zhuangxuan gave a thumbs up and said, "Yumeng, girls like you are really rare nowadays." Sun Yumeng said embarrassedly, "Maybe I'm too conservative." Zhao Xiaoshu said with a little embarrassment, "Sister Yumeng, you make me look so superficial." Lin Zhuangxuan chuckled and said, "Girls like you, Sister Yumeng, are generally considered outliers. Girls like you, Xiaoshu, who are direct and bold, are just as likable. Don't you think so, Weifeng?" Su Weifeng nodded awkwardly and said, "Not bad." Lin Zhuangxuan blinked and said, "Okay, now that this matter has been discussed, you two don't have to be so cautious in the future." Zhao Xiaoshu and Sun Yumeng both nodded shyly, glancing at Su Weifeng with joy in their eyes. The matter was discussed, but now everyone was suddenly embarrassed. Sun Yumeng and Zhao Xiaoshu didn't know how to start at all. Lin Zhuangxuan also knew that this matter couldn't be rushed. The simplest thing at this time was to provide them with more opportunities to get along. Lin Zhuangxuan smiled and asked, "By the way, do you two know how to play Mahjong?" Zhao Xiaoshu nodded and said, "I know how to play a little." Sun Yumeng shook her head and said, "I've never played it before." Lin Zhuangxuan smiled and said, "You can learn to play, even if you don't know how to play. Let's go and play Mahjong for a while." The four of them came to the entertainment room, set up the Mahjong table, and then started playing. But after playing for a while, the atmosphere was relaxed. Zhao Xiaoshu and Sun Yumeng were obviously thinking about how to face Su Weifeng in the future, so they were in no mood to play. Lin Zhuangxuan also saw it, and could only say helplessly, "Okay, let's stop here today. You two can stay here tonight, and the three of us can have a good exchange." Zhao Xiaoshu and Sun Yumeng quickly agreed obediently, and then directly occupied Su Weifeng's master bedroom. Su Weifeng was lying on the bed in a client room on the first floor, but his mind was in a mess. After today, would he have to live that kind of shameless life? Chapter 483 Nature. Lin Zhuangxuan didn't even come to see him that night, which made Su Weifeng somewhat lonely and sleepless. The next morning, Su Weifeng went to the gym early to do some morning exercises. When he came to the living room, Lin Zhuangxuan and the other three were already sitting at the dining table. Zhao Xiaoshu greeted Su Weifeng excitedly, saying, "Brother Su, you are so slow, come and eat." This greeting was quite natural and casual, without any restraint and uneasiness from yesterday. When Su Weifeng came over, Sun Yumeng immediately pulled out the chair next to her and handed him a bowl of porridge. Su Weifeng sat down, and Lin Zhuangxuan said, "Today, you two must sort out the script we discussed last night, otherwise it will affect our filming plan." Zhao Xiaoshu took a bite of the fried egg and said vaguely, "Absolutely no problem. I just asked my classmates to help me apply for leave. I won't go to school these 2 days. I will definitely finish this script." Sun Yumeng also nodded and said, we should be able to come up with the first version this morning. And then Sister Zhuangsun, you can see the effect. Su Weifeng ate, while secretly glancing at the three people, but he couldn't help but mutter in his heart. I thought that Zhao Xiaoshu and Sun Yumeng would be embarrassed to face him this morning, but the reality was completely different from what he imagined. The two of them didn't react like that at all, and seemed to focus all their attention on work. After dinner, the four of them simply packed up and went to the company together. Along the way, Lin Zhuangsun, Zhao Xiaoshu and Sun Yumeng were still talking about work, almost ignoring Su Weifeng. There was a lot of work in the morning, and Su Weifeng was also very busy. He could not take a break until noon. There was a knock on the door, and Su Weifeng went to open the door. Usually at this time, people from the company would deliver the ordered food. It was Zhao Xiaoshu who came in, holding 2 bags in her hands. Brother Su, it's time to eat. Zhao Xiaoshu raised the bag in her hand, then walked past Su Weifeng, sat on the sofa, and placed the lunch boxes in the bag on the coffee table. Su Weifeng also came over and sat down, took a look, and said, 2 people's portions? Yes. Sister Zhuangsun and Sister Yumeng went out to shoot, and said they would eat outside, and would not be back at noon. At noon, we ate together. As she said that, Zhao Xiaoshu handed over a pair of chopsticks. Su Weifeng took it, then shook his head gently, and a smile appeared on his face. Zhao Xiaoshu looked at Su Weifeng with a smile and said, Brother Su, what are you laughing at? Su Weifeng shook his head again and said, I'm laughing at myself. What's wrong with you? Zhao Xiaoshu bit his chopsticks and blinked. Su Weifeng took a bite of the food and ate it, then said, I laugh at myself for thinking so dirty. Zhao Xiaoshu's eyes lit up, and he stood up, and moved to Su Weifeng's side, and said, how dirty is it? Su Weifeng laughed and said, I thought you two would find ways to get close to me and please me. Zhao Xiaoshu chuckled and said, are you a little disappointed now? Su Weifeng took another bite of the food, and said while chewing, no, I feel relieved now. I really didn't expect that you could consider my feelings in this way. Zhao Xiaoshu chuckled complacently and said, this was proposed by Sister Yumeng. She said that since Brother Su, what you need is true feelings and true love, then we can't be too proactive. We just need to have more opportunities to get along with you, and everything else will happen naturally. If we are too deliberate, then Brother Su, you will definitely have a grudge in your heart, and that would be best not to have any effect. Su Weifeng nodded repeatedly and said, Yumeng is really thoughtful. Zhao Xiaoshu said, yeah, if it were me, I would think I could just climb into your bed. Su Weifeng couldn't help but chuckled and said, if that's the case, doesn't it mean that if I get a woman into my bed every day, my injury will heal quickly? Zhao Xiaoshu stuck out his tongue and said, I've already been intimate with you. Even if we didn't really go to bed, it was almost there, so I just thought directly. Brother Su, do you think I'm a casual girl? Su Weifeng shook his head and said, of course not. It's not the first day we've known each other. Zhao Xiaoshu patted his chest and said, then I'm relieved. And, Brother Su, have you really never liked me sincerely? When you were with me, there were no special circumstances like Sister Zhuangsun said. Su Weifeng looked at Zhao Xiaoshu and said, I really didn't think so much before. After all, I already have Zhuangsun. What about now? Zhao Xiaoshu asked expectantly. Su Weifeng shook his head gently and said, I can't explain it now. Maybe I'm more touched. You are willing to accept this special way of getting along for me. This is really unfair to you. Zhao Xiaoshu immediately pouted and said, we are not wronged. You don't know how excited I am. Su Weifeng couldn't help but touch Zhao Xiaoshu's head lovingly and said, you are such a silly girl. Zhao Xiaoshu was like a kitten, squinting her eyes in ecstasy, and said, I'm also happy to be a silly girl by Brother Su's side for the rest of my life. Su Weifeng was moved again and said, okay, let's eat quickly. It won't taste good if it gets cold. Zhao Xiaoshu was like a happy little swallow, chattering with Su Weifeng while eating. But Zhao Xiaoshu didn't do anything to seduce Su Weifeng on purpose, nor did she have any intimate actions with Su Weifeng. Actually, for her, this is all about restraining herself, but she wants to make Su Weifeng feel that special situation when they are together, so that Su Weifeng can recover from his injuries. Now even if Su Weifeng asks her to go to bed, she will definitely not agree, which will reduce many opportunities for the two of them to be together, and it is likely that there will be fewer opportunities to help Su Weifeng recover from his injuries. There is another point, which is also an important reason for Zhao Xiaoshu to have such a mentality. Now that she is dating Su Weifeng, it is already a legitimate reason, and even a righteous reason, so her back is straight, and she is confident in her heart, and no longer worried that the two will be resisted when they are together. As a girl, she naturally hopes to have a true love with the man she likes, instead of her own efforts, and no longer waiting for Su Weifeng's charity like before. Chapter 484 Crisis. After Zhao Xiaoshu finished his meal, he did not stay in Su Weifeng's office for long and left directly. Su Weifeng went to the gym to train for a while at noon, but still did not see Feng Baoer. It was obvious that his body had not recovered yet. As soon as he returned to the office, Su Weifeng's cell phone rang. The phone number was Mr. Zhao from Jinhu Company in the provincial capital. They had an appointment to have dinner together in the evening and then discuss the next cooperation. Su Weifeng answered the call immediately and said, "Boss Zhao, are you done with your work? I'll pick you up now." "Boss Su." Boss Zhao's voice was somewhat awkward, and he said, "I'm so sorry. I have something tonight and can't have dinner with you." Su Weifeng smiled and said, "That's a pity. Let's make another appointment." Ahem. Boss Zhao coughed twice and said, "Boss Su, this." Su Weifeng frowned slightly and said, "Boss Zhao, just say whatever you want to say. Then I won't beat around the bush. We can't cooperate anymore." Su Weifeng had already vaguely guessed that such a situation would occur from Boss Zhao's attitude, and said, "Boss Zhao, our cooperation has always been good. Can you tell me the reason for the non-cooperation? I think it should not be due to our company, but external reasons, right? Boss Su is really smart. The other party puts a lot of pressure on me. The power is too great, and I really can't afford to offend them, so I can only apologize." "Yeah, then I understand. I won't embarrass Boss Zhao by telling you who puts pressure on you." Boss Zhao said awkwardly, "Thank you Boss Su for your understanding." After hanging up the phone, Su Weifeng tapped the table with his fingers. He immediately guessed who was behind this. No one would target him yet, and he had to have such strength to put such great pressure on Mr. Zhao's company. It would not be anyone else except Jin Yuhu. There was a knock on the door, and an employee walked in quickly with a panicked expression on his face. "Mr. Su, something bad has happened." Su Weifeng pointed to the chair in front of him and said calmly, "Don't worry, talk slowly." Su Weifeng's attitude made the employee's spirit slow down a little, but he still said anxiously, "Mr. Su, most of our videos have been blocked just now." Su Weifeng's expression was still calm, and he said, "That's all? Isn't this serious enough?" The employee was a little confused. The video was the company's achievement. Now that it was blocked, it was simply going to cut off the company's livelihood. Su Weifeng nodded and said, "It's serious, but panicking won't solve the problem." Oh. The employee certainly understood this, but Su Weifeng was too calm now, and he didn't know what to say for a moment. "Don't worry, I'll deal with this little thing quickly. You can go back to work." Obviously, the company will encounter many problems now, and the employees will definitely be panicked. Only if he, the boss, is not panicked can he reassure these people. The things here have not been solved yet, and more troubles appeared again the next day. This time, the things are even more troublesome. More than half of the employees in the company resigned. And this kind of resignation is the kind of resignation that does not come directly, without even saying hello to the company, and leaving is quite resolute. In Lin Zhuangxuan's office, Su Weifeng, Sun Yumeng, and Zhao Xiaoshu are all there. Lin Zhuangxuan frowned, and Sun Yumeng and Zhao Xiaoshu both looked extremely anxious. Zhao Xiaoshu slapped the armrest of the sofa in anger and said, "What kind of company is that Langhu Entertainment? How can they do things like this? It's just too bad." Sun Yumeng said with a stern face, "They are clearly malicious competition, and they are targeting our company." The two of them also received calls from Langhu Entertainment. The other party directly proposed $1 million annual salary. Seeing that the two did not agree, they even doubled it and proposed an annual salary of $2 million. This is very attractive to ordinary screenwriters, let alone newcomers like Sun Yumeng and Zhao Xiaoshu. Of course, Sun Yumeng and Zhao Xiaoshu directly refused, which also made them know who is targeting their company now. Lin Zhuangxuan said, "It's obvious that they are competing with me maliciously, and they are coming with such force that they want to destroy our company. The most annoying thing is that before these employees came to us, they had no experience or foundation at all. They were all trained here, but now they just leave." Zhao Xiaoshu also said angrily, "Yes, these people are really heartless. Our company has been so good to them, but they abandoned the company just for money." Sun Yumeng nodded repeatedly and said, "Yes, yes, can other companies have the same working atmosphere as ours? Where else can we find such a good boss? They will definitely regret it when they leave." Su Weifeng laughed and said, "Don't be angry. People die for money and birds die for food. Not many people come out to work to pursue their ideals. Most of them pursue economic benefits. Now that someone gives them higher treatment, it is normal for them to leave because they can't resist the temptation." Lin Zhuangxuan sighed and said, "Yes, but we don't have any way now. Our contract mentions more about the treatment given to employees, but the binding force on employees is not strong. There is almost no constraint on compensation after employees suddenly resign. Now they are gone, and we can't stop it." Zhao Xiaoshu said angrily, "Then we have to add it to the employees in the future. Otherwise people will just run away after they are trained, which is really a loss." Sun Yumeng nodded and said, "Yes, this does need to be improved. The system should be the first priority when running a company." Lin Zhuangxuan smiled bitterly and said, "I did this before purely for an ideal and fun. I didn't think so much at all, so I didn't think so much about the contracts signed with the employees. I just thought that, if I was good to you, you would repay me well." Su Weifeng chuckled and said, "Are you going to be a qualified capitalist now?" Lin Zhuangxuan rolled her eyes at Su Weifeng and said, "Of course not. The main nature of capitalists is exploitation. I just need to set up a 1-year contract and prevent employees from leaving without permission. The rest can still be discussed." Lin Zhuangxuan has not lost her original intention, which also comforted Su Weifeng. He said, "It is an indisputable fact that people have been poached now. We still need to recruit more people. This is an urgent problem that we need to solve." Zhao Xiaoshu said, "I have a classmate who is in an art school in the provincial capital. We can recruit some people there. What do you think?" Chapter 485 Idiot. Lin Zhuangxuan nodded and said, "We can give it a try, but is it easy to recruit students from these professional schools? Will they be willing to come to a small company like ours?" The previous employees were all self-taught, so Lin Zhuangxuan seemed somewhat unconfident about recruiting artists from these professional schools. Zhao Xiaoshu hurriedly said, "It shouldn't be difficult. The employment pressure in art schools is very high now. Although some people have already received roles in school, more people don't even have a chance to perform. Some people are willing to do it, even if they don't get paid, as long as they are given the opportunity to be on camera." Sun Yumeng stuck out her tongue and said, "Is it so miserable?" Zhao Xiaoshu said, "How many artists can really make a name for themselves in a year? But there are too many students graduating from art schools across the country every year. Too many people don't even have the opportunity to perform, and then they do other jobs to make a living." At this point, Zhao Xiaoshu blinked at Su Weifeng again and said, "Brother Su, if you want to do some unspoken rules, it's very easy." Su Weifeng raised his hand and knocked on Zhao Xiaoshu's head, saying, "Why are you hiding? I want to hide you, too." Zhao Xiaoshu immediately straightened his chest and said, "Please hide." Su Weifeng rolled his eyes immediately. This little girl is really fearless now, and he can't do anything about her. Everyone just laughed and joked for a while to ease the atmosphere, and then began to seriously discuss how to face the current crisis. This company doesn't have much assets in total, so it won't lose much, but this was built from scratch by Su Weifeng and Lin Zhuangxuan, so its significance is completely different from other companies. In addition, this is Jinyu target. If this problem cannot be solved, it would be equivalent to being defeated by Jinyu, which is too embarrassing. I sorted out the problems I encountered now. The first is the problem of employees. The employees who stay now are basically the most loyal in the company. They can be reused in the future, but you should also pay attention to the fact that some of them may be secretly bribed by Jinyu and then stay as traitors. But Su Weifeng didn't bring it up. Lin Zhuangxuan and the others didn't have his scheming. Once they had doubts in their hearts, they would easily show it, which was not conducive to digging out the traitors. Reuse the employees who stay now, recruit more, and then make some changes to the contract to avoid the problem of employees leaving. The second is the communication problem with the video platform. The largest video platforms now have strong enough backgrounds, and they are no longer something that ordinary people can influence. Even the ZHU family in the provincial capital can't force them to do anything. The videos that Su Weifeng and his team were blocked are basically on some small video platforms. There are not many blocked videos on large platforms, only a few, and the reason is that they have been reported by a large number of people and the content is suspected of being vulgar. So such things are actually not difficult to solve. You can solve them by communicating with the video platform normally and presenting evidence. But the only annoying thing is that the other party may keep reporting, and they can't do anything to you, but they will disgust you to death. The third is the partner. There are many solutions to this problem, and in addition to the most important cooperation with the video platform, their company's cooperation with other companies is actually not very important at all. It's just a resource integration, which is more convenient. So now the first problem is still the problem of employees. In the afternoon, Su Weifeng and Lin Zhuangxuan convened a general meeting of employees. But now there are only more than a dozen left in the entire company, more than half less than before. Lin Zhuangxuan first thanked everyone for staying, and then explained to everyone how the company would face the crisis in the future, and painted a rosy picture for everyone to reassure everyone. To be honest, there are indeed 2 or 3 people who are truly loyal to the company, but the rest are actually not very capable, and the other company didn't even fancy them. But now the company always needs someone, even if they are not very capable, they can take over temporarily, and that will allow the company to operate normally. Su Weifeng's cell phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. Su Weifeng walked out to answer it. Haha, how is it? Is it fun? Jinyu, whose arrogant laughter came from the phone immediately. Su Weifeng said indifferently, it's boring. Really? Then we can upgrade again. How about we make a bet? Su Weifeng said, how to bet? Jinyu, who smiled and said, I bet your company will go bankrupt within a month. Su Weifeng chuckled and said, I think you have to set some conditions, otherwise I can just put some money in, and you can't make me bankrupt. Jinyu, who laughed again and said, boy, you are really interesting. Since you want to make it fun, you really have to add some restrictions. Otherwise, it will be difficult to tell the winners and losers. Then I will set some requirements. I have invested a total of 50 million in Langhu Entertainment. I can play with this money. You can also invest so much, and then see if I can make you bankrupt within a month. That's all? Su Weifeng asked indifferently. You are afraid that I will use the power of my family. What's the matter? Are you afraid? Don't you also have the Shu family and the ZHU family? Your family background is not low. If you are willing to use this, don't you admit that your family background is not as powerful as mine? Su Weifeng chuckled and said, you are very confident in the power of your family. Of course, the Jin family is mine, and the resources I can mobilize are completely incomparable to you. Are you afraid? You don't dare to make this bet with me? If you admit defeat now, then I can stop attacking your company. Haha, then what is the bet? Bet. Jinyu, who chuckled and said, the bet is simple. If I win, you will be my little brother in the future, and do whatever I say. Su Weifeng asked lightly, what if you lose? I lose? That's impossible. Jinyu, who laughed confidently, and then said, if you can win, then I, Jinyu, who will no longer bother you. PFFT, idiot. Su Weifeng couldn't help but curse. What the hell is this bet? It's simply a moron. Jinyu, who laughed and said, do you think it's unfair? But you have no chance to refuse. Even if you don't agree, I will still deal with you. If you agree, you at least still have a chance, right? 3 shots. This time, Su Weifeng hung up the phone directly. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 486. Really good at boasting. Just like Jinyu, who said, whether Su Weifeng agreed or not, this guy would still make trouble. Su Weifeng would have to deal with him. This kind of competition in the market can be regarded as a way to hone Lin Zhuangxuan and a team, so Su Weifeng did not think about stopping Jinyu now. After discussing with Lin Zhuangxuan, it was decided that Su Weifeng and Zhao Xiaoshu would go to the provincial capital overnight and recruit students in the school as soon as possible. It was more convenient to go out by high-speed rail, so Su Weifeng and Zhao Xiaoshu took the high-speed rail to the provincial capital. Sitting next to Su Weifeng, Zhao Xiaoshu turned his face sideways and looked at Su Weifeng's face from time to time, with a faint blush on his face, and there was more excitement and expectation in his eyes. Su Weifeng felt a little uncomfortable when Zhao Xiaoshu looked at him. He coughed lightly and said, "Xiaoshu, do you want to eat something?" Zhao Xiaoshu chuckled happily and said, "Brother Su, you are blushing." Su Weifeng shook his head and whispered, "I feel guilty when a beautiful woman like you stares at me all the time." Zhao Xiaoshu stretched out his hand and gently took Su Weifeng's arm and whispered, "Brother Su, is this okay? Can I say no?" Su Weifeng deliberately frowned. Zhao Xiaoshu pouted and said, "Of course not. Now I have obtained Sister Zhuangxuan's consent." Su Weifeng couldn't help laughing and said, "Then, am I following orders to pick up girls?" "Yes, you have to pick up girls, even if you don't want to." Zhao Xiaoshu blinked proudly and hugged Su Weifeng's arm tighter. Zhao Xiaoshu hugged so tightly that her chest was pressed tightly against Su Weifeng's arm. This really made Su Weifeng feel a little confused. He coughed lightly and said, "Don't make trouble. Be careful of the impact." Zhao Xiaoshu pointed to a couple across the aisle and said, "Look at them." Su Weifeng glanced at them and saw that they were hugging each other tighter. Su Weifeng said, "They are a couple." Zhao Xiaoshu pouted and said, "Aren't we not?" Su Weifeng opened his mouth, then rubbed his nose and said, "It seems that I haven't adapted yet. You have to give me some time." Zhao Xiaoshu stuck out his tongue, let go of Su Weifeng's arm, and gently held Su Weifeng's hand, saying, "Yes, Sister Yumeng also reminded me that I'm always anxious." Su Weifeng's heart was slightly moved at this time. Zhao Xiaoshu's words still touched him a lot. This girl was all about him, and because he was no longer restrained in his heart, he had to say that he liked Zhao Xiaoshu quite a lot. The kind of emotion that he thought was difficult seemed to be easily generated. Thinking about it carefully, Su Weifeng understood what was going on. In fact, it wasn't that he didn't like Zhao Xiaoshu before, but for various reasons, he couldn't let himself like her, so he suppressed this kind of liking. Now that he let go of his heart, this kind of emotion is not generated, but released. The two arrived in the provincial capital before 8 o'clock, and went directly to a 5-star hotel near the art school. When booking a room, Zhao Xiaoshu took the initiative to book 2 rooms. After returning to the room and tidying up simply, Zhao Xiaoshu had contacted his classmates in advance, and soon, his classmates rushed over. Zhao Xiaoshu's classmate is called Liu Ying, with fair skin, beautiful face and long legs. She is indeed a beauty, but it is obvious that her makeup is heavier, and there is still some gap with Zhao Xiaoshu's natural beauty. "Brother Su, this is my classmate Liu Ying. Liu Ying, this is my company's CEO Su Weifeng." Su Weifeng took the initiative to extend his hand and said, "Nice to meet you." Liu Ying shook Su Weifeng's hand and said, "Hello, CEO Su." After everyone sat down, Liu Ying took the initiative to say, "CEO Su, can you tell me more about this recruitment and the strength of your company?" Xiaoshu didn't explain it very clearly. Zhao Xiaoshu had only been in the company for a few days, and he had not been involved in the company's affairs before. He just wrote novels and scripts, so he knew very little about the company's situation. Su Weifeng nodded and introduced the company's situation to Liu Ying. Liu Ying said, I have to say something unpleasant. Your company is still a little weak. If you just want to shoot a web drama or something, it's not difficult to find some people, but you want to recruit a group of long-term artists, and everyone still hopes to go to that kind of big company. Su Weifeng nodded and said, this is easy to do. I will immediately inject 100 million yuan into the company. Will this reflect a big company? This? Are you kidding? Liu Yang's eyes widened immediately. Zhao Xiaoshu immediately said seriously, of course I'm not kidding. Liu Yang twitched her lips and said, that's 100 million yuan. You can invest just like me. Xiaoshu, you. Although she didn't say the rest of the words, Su Weifeng and Zhao Xiaoshu both understood whether what she was going to say was a lie. Su Weifeng smiled slightly and said, this is also simple. My personal investment is not very convincing. I will immediately arrange for a large film and television company to invest in it. Xiaoshu, tell Liu Yang what kind of people we want to recruit. Su Weifeng stood up and made a phone call nearby. Liu Yang immediately pulled Zhao Xiaoshu, frowned and whispered, Zhao Xiaoshu, is this reliable? Why do I feel it is so unreliable? Zhao Xiaoshu hurriedly said, Liu Yang, don't you still believe in me? I can still lie to you. You don't know the strength of brother Su. Don't worry about this. At this time, Su Weifeng made a phone call, and the call was to Zhao Gang of Mingyang Company. Zhao Gang, I have another problem for you. Zhao Gang immediately said excitedly, what trouble is it? Just say a word and I will do it right away. The more things he did for Su Weifeng, the more friendship they had. I'll get you 100 million, and you invest it directly into my dream company. It's just 100 million. I'll just invest it. No, that won't work. It will become your company. I'll invest it myself. That's true. Then you immediately issue an announcement. I mainly want the company to look more impressive, and then it will be easier to recruit people. Got it? I'll do it right away. After finishing the call, Su Weifeng came over and sat down and said, everything has been arranged, but it's too late today, and it certainly can't be done now, but it will definitely be done tomorrow, and there will definitely be an announcement. With a 100 million investment, shouldn't there be any problem? Liu Yang's face got even darker. Su Weifeng put it too simply, and his tone was clearly bragging. Chapter 487. It turns out he wasn't bragging. Zhao Xiaoshu, here, I have something else to do. I'll go back first. Liu Yang stood up and turned to leave. Zhao Xiaoshu quickly got up and caught up, grabbed Liu Yang's arm, and said anxiously, Liu Yang, don't go. Liu Yang was about to cry and stammered, Zhao Xiaoshu, I don't have any money. You know, my family conditions are average. It's not easy to support me to go to school. It's useless for you to cheat me. Zhao Xiaoshu's face turned red immediately, and he said anxiously, what are you thinking? Why would I cheat you? I'm asking you for help. Liu Yang shook her head repeatedly, and was about to cry, saying, no, I can't help you with this. I beg you to let me go. After all, we are classmates. Su Weifeng couldn't help but look black at this time. It turned out that he had made this call just now and made Liu Yang think he was a liar. He coughed lightly and said, I'm so sorry, I scared you. Xiaoshu, then you can send Liu Yang back. Zhao Xiaoshu smiled bitterly and said, okay then. Seeing that Su Weifeng agreed, Liu Yang hurriedly walked out of the room. The two entered the elevator and came to the lobby, and Liu Yang breathed a sigh of relief. Zhao Xiaoshu frowned and said, Liu Yang, you won't help me with this? There were people coming and going in the lobby of the hotel. Liu Yang regained his confidence and hesitated for a moment, saying, Xiaoshu, we are classmates after all, and we had a good relationship before. I still advise you that this Mr. Su is too unreliable. You have been deceived by him. Zhao Xiaoshu's face turned black and said, why should I be deceived by her? You know my situation. I have no parents and no house or money at home. Liu Yang immediately said, but you are beautiful and he wants to deceive you? I just hope he deceives me. Zhao Xiaoshu's eyes immediately showed a fascinated look. Liu Yang frowned, grabbed Zhao Xiaoshu's arm and said, you are completely poisoned by him. No, we are classmates. I can't watch you jump into the fire pit. Zhao Xiaoshu said dumbfounded, I didn't. You think too much. Look at you. This is not poisoning. You are completely bewitched by him now. Whatever he says is what it is. Come on. Let me help you analyze it. You are definitely confused by the authorities. Liu Yang pulled Zhao Xiaoshu to the side to enlighten her. Zhao Xiaoshu's cell phone rang. Brother Su, what's wrong? Don't come up yet. I have 2 friends coming soon. Bring them up. I'll give them your phone number. Okay. The elevators in this hotel all require room cards to go up, and friends from outside still need to be picked up by people living here. After hanging up the phone, Liu Yang began to ask Zhao Xiaoshu how she knew Su Weifeng. Zhao Xiaoshu also said it casually, which made Liu Yang unable to find any fault with it, but she seemed to feel that Su Weifeng's method was more sophisticated. Otherwise he would not be able to deceive Zhao Xiaoshu. After talking for a while, Zhao Xiaoshu's cell phone rang. Zhao Xiaoshu quickly answered it, and walked quickly to the door of the lobby. Liu Yang hesitated for a moment, followed Zhao Xiaoshu a few steps behind. There were 2 men, who looked extraordinary, and one of them seemed familiar to Liu Yang. Brother Zheng, Brother Zhao, please follow me. Zhao Xiaoshu politely led the way. Zheng, this is Zheng Yulang. Liu Yang suddenly remembered who this man was. Then she was so shocked that her eyes almost popped out. Zheng Yulang, a famous nobleman in the provincial capital, a famous diamond bachelor. How could students of their art school not know Zheng Yulang, the boss of an entertainment company? Even if they had never communicated, they would remember his name and appearance. Zhao, then this must be Zhao Mingyang. Yes, that's Zhao Mingyang. Liu Yang also thought of Zhao Mingyang, and quickly reached out to cover her mouth. Otherwise she would have screamed. For others, Zheng Yulang and Zhao Mingyang might just be 2 rich men, but for Liu Yang, who was in the art school, this was simply a great opportunity to achieve success and fame. If she seized this opportunity, maybe she would really be able to get a role in the future and be praised by others. When Zhao Xiaoshu took Zheng Yulang and Zhao Mingyang into the elevator, Liu Yang quickly rushed into the elevator. Pretending not to know Zhao Mingyang and Zheng Yulang, she smiled and said to Zhao Xiaoshu, Xiaoshu, I'll go up with you. You. Zhao Xiaoshu looked at Liu Yang with some doubts. Liu Yang's attitude changed a lot. Liu Yang quickly took Zhao Xiaoshu's arm and said, Xiaoshu, I may have thought too much just now, but I really do it for your own good. Zhao Xiaoshu immediately smiled happily and said, you thought too much. Zhao Mingyang and Zheng Yulang both looked at Liu Yang at this time, and Liu Yang also deliberately said, Xiaoshu, these 2 gentlemen are. Zhao Xiaoshu hurriedly said, these 2 are friends of Brother Su, Brother Zhao and Brother Zheng. Brothers, this is my classmate Liu Yang. Liu Yang quickly stretched out her hands and said, hello, Brother Zheng. Hello, Brother Zhao. Liu Yang felt that she had concealed it well. But Zheng Yulang and Zhao Mingyang usually interacted with more little girls, and they immediately saw Liu Yang's little thoughts. But they did not point it out, shook hands with Liu Yang, and then went to Su Weifeng's room together. Brother Su, Zheng Yulang and Zhao Mingyang went directly over and gave Su Weifeng a warm hug. Liu Yang was dumbfounded at this time. The students in the art school were more social than those in ordinary schools. From the hugging of the 3 people, she could feel that Zheng Yulang and Zhao Mingyang were more proactive, which showed that Su Weifeng's status and position seemed to be higher than his. Who were Zheng Yulang and Zhao Mingyang? They were the bosses of famous film and television entertainment companies in the province. Now they were so polite to Su Weifeng. Doesn't that mean that Su Weifeng's strength is really stronger than his? Think about what Su Weifeng said just now when he called and said he would invest 100 million yuan directly. This is not bragging, it is clear that he really has the strength. I actually doubted Su Weifeng just now, and even turned around and left. I'm afraid that I have already left a bad impression on Su Weifeng. I have clearly boarded a fast train, but because of my misjudgment, I got off halfway. Liu Yang was so annoyed that she really wanted to slap herself twice. Her eyes turned to Zhao Xiaoshu, and her heart moved. Her future and prospects now depended on Zhao Xiaoshu. Chapter 488, A Smart Decision. Brother Su, these 2 girls are great. Are they from your company? After chatting for a while, Zheng Yulang blinked his eyes and tried to test Su Weifeng's attitude. Su Weifeng naturally knew what Zheng Yulang and Zhao Mingyang were thinking. After a slight hesitation, he said, Xiaoshu is a specially hired writer in our company. The online movie we shot this time is adapted from her novel. She is a talented woman. Oh, so she is a writer. This is disrespectful. Zheng Yulan and Zhao Mingyang immediately said politely to Zhao Xiaoshu. Zhao Xiaoshu said embarrassedly, this is the first time I wrote something at random. If it weren't for Brother Su's encouragement and support, I would never have written it. Su Weifeng smiled slightly and said, Xiaoshu and Yu Meng are the two best creators in our company. I dare not offend them now. Zheng Yulan and Zhao Mingyang heard Su Weifeng compare Zhao Xiaoshu and Sun Yumeng, and they roughly knew that Zhao Xiaoshu's position in Su Weifeng's heart was still not low. As for whether she was Su Weifeng's woman, that was not important. This is Liu Ying, Zhao Xiaoshu's classmate, and also a student in the art school. I originally wanted her to help recruit some students, but there was some misunderstanding just now. She might have thought I was a liar. Pucci. Zheng Yulan and Zhao Mingyang burst into laughter. Liu Ying looked embarrassed and panicked at this time, and now she couldn't figure out what Su Weifeng meant by this. Zhao Xiaoshu said hurriedly at this time, Brother Su, Liu Ying is also doing this for my own good. She has been worried that I was deceived by you. Su Weifeng narrowed his eyes and said, can Liu Ying help us with this now? Liu Ying was overjoyed and said hurriedly, yes, I will do my best, but I'm afraid that my ability is limited, and I can't satisfy you, Mr. Su. Zheng Yulan immediately said, isn't it just recruiting some people from the art school? This is a simple matter. We are familiar with the teachers there. Zhao Mingyang also patted his chest and said, yes, call now and get the list tomorrow. Liu Ying sighed in his heart. With these two great gods taking action, he would have no chance to show off. Su Weifeng said at this time, just help me find some lists, and let Liu Ying do the rest. Oh. Why? Zheng Yulan was a little surprised. Su Weifeng looked at Zhao Xiaoshu. Zhao Xiaoshu immediately understood and said, Liu Ying, come to my room, and let's discuss how to do this tomorrow. After the two left, Su Weifeng briefly told him about the trouble that Jin Yuhu from the Jin family had caused him. Zheng Yulan immediately glared and said, damn, this Jin Yuhu is such a bastard, he's simply not worth it. Zhao Mingyang shook his head and said, this Jin Yuhu is really not easy to deal with. The Jin family's power is no smaller than ours, and they have the Liu family's backing. Our two families can't afford to offend them. Zheng Yulan snorted and said, so what? As long as Brother Su gives the word, the ZHU family, Zheng family and Zhao family in the province will take action. What are their Liu family and Jin family? Su Weifeng chuckled and said, thank you for your kindness, but I don't want to be involved too much in this matter for the time being, and you shouldn't get involved. I don't want to make things too complicated. To put it bluntly, I don't really want to get involved in the struggle between families. It would be better if it was just a struggle between individuals. Zhao Mingyang and Zheng Yulan both understood Su Weifeng and knew that Su Weifeng really didn't like these messy things, so they could only stop talking about it. In Zhao Xiaoshu's room, Liu Ying's face was filled with worry. She held the bottle of mineral water in her hand and said, Xiaoshu, will I leave a very bad impression on Mr. Su? Zhao Xiaoshu coughed lightly and said, this, I don't know what Brother Su will think. Zhao Xiaoshu was telling the truth. Although she and Su Weifeng now have a special relationship, she has not had much contact with Su Weifeng, and she doesn't know Su Weifeng's character as well as Sun Yumeng. What should I do? If Mr. Su has a bad impression of me, then Xiaoshu. Liu Ying grabbed Zhao Xiaoshu's arm excitedly and said, Xiaoshu, you must say something good for me. I don't want to lose such a good opportunity. Zhao Xiaoshu asked in confusion, opportunity? We are asking you for help. Liu Ying was stunned for a moment. She didn't know whether Zhao Xiaoshu was sincere or was alluding to her. But from Zhao Xiaoshu's innocent eyes, she knew that Zhao Xiaoshu was speaking from the heart. This made Liu Ying have an idea in her mind. Should she take advantage of Zhao Xiaoshu's innocence? But soon, Liu Ying gave up the idea and decided to express her thoughts sincerely to see if Zhao Xiaoshu could help. This might be the smartest decision Liu Ying made, and it was also her way of repaying Zhao Xiaoshu's kindness. After taking a deep breath, Liu Yang said, Xiaoshu, I've told you that it's quite difficult for our art school students to get acting jobs. I hope to leave a good impression in front of President Su. Of course, it would be best if I can sign with President Su's company. If not, it would also be good if they can think of me when there are any good acting opportunities in the future. Zhao Xiaoshu immediately said, this shouldn't be a difficult thing. Our company is recruiting now. You have helped our company recruit people, so there will be no problem signing a contract with the company. However, whether you can get an acting opportunity depends on whether there are any suitable roles for you in the future. Liu Yang immediately said excitedly, really? Are you so sure? Zhao Xiaoshu smiled and said, it should be no problem. I can talk to Brother Su tonight. I don't think he will refuse. Liu Yang's eyes lit up, and she asked cautiously, then you and President Su, ahem. She touched her thumbs lightly and said, what's the relationship? Zhao Xiaoshu blushed immediately and said, don't think too much. I'm Brother Su's god sister. Oh, god sister, I get it. Liu Yang chuckled, her face showing an ambiguous look. What god sister, god daughter, there are so many people around her who play such roles. Zhao Xiaoshu was even more embarrassed and said angrily, don't think too much. I like Brother Su, but Brother Su doesn't like me yet. I just have a one-sided love for him. He can take you out alone, which already explains the problem. Xiaoshu, I really didn't expect that you would find such a good man. I envy you so much. Zhao Xiaoshu's face turned redder, but he was indescribably happy and proud in his heart. Chapter 489 Zhao Xiaoshu succeeded. After a while, Zhao Xiaoshu was called over by Su Weifeng again. Su Weifeng asked with a smile, these two guys insisted on inviting us out to relax tonight. Do you want to go with us? Zhao Xiaoshu really didn't know whether to agree or refuse. Zheng Yulang said with a smile, what's the point of the three of us going out to play? You must go together. Su Weifeng said with a smile, okay, then Xiaoshu, you can go with us. Liu Yang, if you have nothing to do, you can also go with us. Liu Yang's heart had been in her throat for a long time, fearing that Su Weifeng would not invite her. At this time, she was excited, and her face flushed. She nodded repeatedly and said, okay. The five people came to a bar and found a private room on the second floor. The side of the private room facing the stage had a floor-to-ceiling window, which did not affect the performance on the stage at all, and the view was better. At first, everyone was just drinking and chatting casually, but after a while, Zheng Yulang and Zhao Mingyang started to make a fuss, joking about the relationship between Zhao Xiaoshu and Su Weifeng. Zhao Xiaoshu was both embarrassed and happy, and drank a lot of wine unconsciously. She was not a person with a good alcohol tolerance. When she got drunk, she hugged Su Weifeng's arm and rested her head on Su Weifeng's shoulder. Su Weifeng did not stop her, and he also admitted Zhao Xiaoshu's relationship in front of Zheng Yulang and Zhao Mingyang. Liu Yang felt more confident now and took the initiative to drink with Zhao Mingyang and Zheng Yulang. The atmosphere was quite good. However, Liu Yang was still a very smart person. At this time, she did not add Zheng Yulang and Zhao Mingyang's WeChat. She knew very well that she was nothing in the eyes of these two people. Even if they added her WeChat for the sake of face, it would be useless. Now she had to show some depth and perform well in front of Su Weifeng so that she could develop in the future. It was past midnight when Su Weifeng and his friends returned to the hotel. Zhao Xiaoshu was drunk, and Su Weifeng carried her back to the hotel. When Zhao Xiaoshu was put on the bed, Zhao Xiaoshu suddenly hugged Su Weifeng's neck and opened his eyes. Su Weifeng bent over and smiled. Are you not pretending to sleep? Zhao Xiaoshu pouted and whispered, Brother Su, I miss you. Su Weifeng's heart was moved. What happened with Zhao Xiaoshu now? He didn't have any psychological burden, but before Su Weifeng could think clearly, Zhao Xiaoshu's kiss had already been sent up. Su Weifeng struggled in his heart at first, but soon let go and began to respond to Zhao Xiaoshu. More than 10 minutes later, Zhao Xiaoshu suddenly found that Su Weifeng was motionless. She was immediately happy in her heart. Lin Zhuangxuan had already described Su Weifeng's situation in detail to her and Sun Yumeng. She knew very well that Su Weifeng had entered that state at this time. This was simply an important milestone for Zhao Xiaoshu. It meant that Su Weifeng really liked her, the kind of love between men and women. She thought that this day would not come so soon, but who knew that it would come so soon. It took more than half an hour for Su Weifeng to come out of that state. Zhao Xiaoshu noticed it immediately and said angrily, "Brother Su, you get up first. I'm going to be crushed to death by you." Su Weifeng quickly turned to the side, looked at Zhao Xiaoshu sideways, and said awkwardly, "I'm so sorry. Thank you for your hard work." Zhao Xiaoshu maintained a posture and let Su Weifeng's 150 to 160 kilograms press down on him, and his body was indeed a little stiff. After moving around for a while, she felt better. She leaned sideways in Su Weifeng's arms and said softly, "Next time this happens, tell me first, so I can find a more comfortable position." Su Weifeng coughed lightly and said, "I can't control it either. This kind of thing sometimes comes for no reason." The two chatted for a while, and Zhao Xiaoshu looked up at Su Weifeng and said affectionately, "Brother Su, I'm really happy." Su Weifeng smiled and asked knowingly, "It's not the first time I kissed you. Are you so happy?" Zhao Xiaoshu's eyes were even softer, and they were so watery that they were about to drip water. He said, "Brother Su, in my heart, you are so great, and I feel that there is a distance of 10,000 miles between you and me. I have always thought that, as long as you can treat me as a little girl by your side, can order me around at will, and I can be by your side, I will be so happy." Su Weifeng's voice was also incomparably soft, and he said, "What about now?" "Now?" Zhao Xiaoshu hugged Su Weifeng tightly, closed his eyes, and said in an intoxicated voice, "I know that Brother Su really likes me, even if it's only for this one night, or even just for that moment, I'll be satisfied." Su Weifeng was really moved by Zhao Xiaoshu, and said, "You are too easily satisfied. I won't let you go so easily." Zhao Xiaoshu felt that Su Weifeng's hand was a little dishonest. His face suddenly turned red, and he hurriedly held Su Weifeng's hand and said, "Brother Su, you can't go on." Sister Zhuangxuan said that this kind of thing must be done step by step. "Oh, this happened right after we kissed. Does that mean we can only go to bed in the future to be effective?" Su Weifeng was startled by Zhao Xiaoshu's nervous reaction, then coughed lightly and said, "It's hard to say. In addition to physical contact, there is also emotional escalation, which can trigger this situation." "And emotional escalation? Does that mean it can make you like me more?" Su Weifeng nodded and said, "Well, it may happen when a certain nerve of mine is touched. This is more mysterious, but I will definitely work hard. I will definitely make Big Brother Su like me more." Zhao Xiaoshu clenched her fists. Now she was really confident. However, Zhao Xiaoshu still let Su Weifeng go back to his room. It was not that she did not trust Su Weifeng, but she did not trust herself. If Su Weifeng stayed, she doubted that she would directly devote herself to it and do everything. Although it was very late, Zhao Xiaoshu could not help but send a message to Sun Yumeng. "Sister Yumeng, Big Brother Su just reached that state here." Sun Yumeng's message came back immediately. "Really? So fast?" Zhao Xiaoshu said excitedly. "Yes, so I said, Big Brother Su doesn't dislike us. It's just that he restrained himself before. When Big Brother Su goes back, you have to work hard too." Sun Yumeng took a long time to send back a few pictures of blushing faces. Her personality made her really not know how to reply. Chapter 490. I'm really scared. In the morning, Zhao Xiaoshu got up early and invited Su Weifeng to go to the restaurant downstairs for breakfast. When they returned to the room, Zhao Xiaoshu had already taken out his laptop and started to sort out the data sent by Zheng Yulan and Zhao Mingyang. Su Weifeng looked at Zhao Xiaoshu and felt a little uncomfortable. Usually, this girl would be eager to get close to him if she got the chance, but after the intimate moment last night, Zhao Xiaoshu was no longer so clingy to him. After a light cough, Su Weifeng said, "Xiaoshu, don't be so anxious to work." Zhao Xiaoshu looked up at Su Weifeng with a sweet smile on his face and said, "Brother Su, Liu Ying will be here soon. I have to know the data in my mind before I can proceed to the next step of classification and processing." Su Weifeng stood up and came to Zhao Xiaoshu's side, stroking her hair, and said, "Then you don't have to work so hard." Zhao Xiaoshu rubbed her head on Su Weifeng's body twice, then stood up and said, "I'm not tired at all. I'm full of energy now. Even if I work for a day and a night, I won't be tired at all. Brother Sue, you should take a break first. The power of love. This is definitely the case. Zhao Xiaoshu's whole spirit and energy changed a lot at once. After a while, Zhao Xiaoshu went downstairs to pick up Liu Ying. The two began to sort out these lists. After all, students in art schools do not have all the majors that Su Weifeng's company needs. Students from the acting and directing departments are what the company needs most. Of course, there are many students from other departments who have some acting talent. If they want to come, they can also be recruited. The workload is not large, and it was done in a short time. Then Liu Ying began to contact the teachers and student union in the school to arrange the recruitment in the afternoon. At this time, Zhao Gang called Su Weifeng and told him that the money had been injected into his company. Their company also directly issued an injection announcement. Su Weifeng took a look and saw that this guy actually got 200 million yuan at once. 100 million yuan was Su Weifeng's own, and the other 100 million yuan was this guy's. Su Weifeng didn't care. This guy was willing to do this, so he didn't feel uneasy about taking his money. Liu Ying, take a look at Mingyang Company's announcement. Our company will also issue an announcement. This should increase our company's influence, right? Liu Ying saw Mingyang Company's announcement first and her eyes widened in shock. Even if she had believed yesterday that Su Weifeng was not bragging, but really had such strength. But now she knows that Su Weifeng's strength is simply beyond her imagination. Mingyang Films is a big company that cannot be compared with Zheng Yulang and Zhao Mingyang. The size is too small. Su Weifeng can get Mingyang Company to invest 200 million yuan with just one phone call. No matter who paid the money, it is enough to show how strong the background and strength of Su Weifeng's company are. No wonder Zheng Yulang and Zhao Mingyang treat Su Weifeng in this way. They definitely have the capital and strength. Boss Su, I was really rude yesterday. Liu Ying apologized guiltily. Su Weifeng waved his hand and said with a smile, it is normal for you to react like this. In addition, you are a cautious person who is not easily blinded by interests. At your age, it is not easy to do this. Boss Su, thank you for the compliment. Liu Ying's heartbeat accelerated, and she clenched her fists excitedly. Su Weifeng smiled again and said, Xiaoshu told me that I think there is no problem at all. It doesn't matter who we hire. It would be better to hire someone who is relatively familiar and capable. You are now clear about our recruitment plan. You can position yourself and then work in that direction. You can let Xiaoshu arrange the specific things for you. Su Weifeng said this to reassure Liu Ying and to give Zhao Xiaoshu face. Thank you, President Su. Thank you, President Su. Liu Ying stood up quickly and saluted Su Weifeng repeatedly. Su Weifeng said with a smile, okay, I'll go take care of other things first. We can get these things done in the afternoon. Su Weifeng returned to his room, and Liu Ying said to Zhao Xiaoshu gratefully, Xiaoshu, thank you for speaking for me. Zhao Xiaoshu chuckled and said, why are you being polite to me? You have helped us a lot, and we should repay you. Liu Ying smiled bitterly and said, what kind of help am I doing? Brother Su just needs a phone call, and then General Manager Zheng and General Manager Zhao can arrange it properly. I'm at most running errands, but you have given me a very promising job. The difference is too big. Zhao Xiaoshu put away his smile at this time and said seriously, Liu Ying, are you sure you really want to work in our company? Liu Ying nodded seriously and said, as long as you want, I will definitely go. I know very well that, although your company has just been established, its future prospects will definitely be very good. At this time of hiring, it is a chance for me to show myself. Such a good opportunity, I'm afraid I would never think of it in my dreams. How could I give up? Zhao Xiaoshu nodded and said, in that case, I have to remind you that, although I have some relationship with Brother Su, I will not use my relationship with him to help you. Everything depends on your own efforts. Liu Ying nodded heavily and said, that's for sure. You have created such a good opportunity for me. I will be grateful to you for the rest of my life. If I really can't do it well, that's my own business. I will leave on my own, and won't have to stay there, and make things difficult for you. The expression on Zhao Xiaoshu's face eased and he said, of course you are my classmate and you helped us this time. I will always take care of you, but I'm just a screenwriter in the company and I can't say too much for you. Liu Wang asked curiously. I didn't dare to ask in depth yesterday about your relationship with President Su. Yesterday she thought that Zhao Xiaoshu was equivalent to Su Weifeng's lover, but looking at their attitudes at work today, it seemed that they were not the same. Zhao Xiaoshu said calmly at this time, I'm just his sister. You really don't have to think too much. Our company's CEO and his brother Su's girlfriend. You will know when you get to the company. Don't make such jokes in the company in the future. Liu Wang's mouth twitched. This relationship seems a bit complicated, especially when it comes to the boss. It is even more difficult to say the wrong thing. However, with Zhao Xiaoshu's pure character, it is really possible that she is just Su Weifeng's sister. Otherwise she would never be able to hide it in front of his real girlfriend. Chapter 491. Stealing People. Su Weifeng's company not only has the latest investment of 200 million, but also has the endorsement of Mingyang Film and Television Company. This is definitely a film and television company with great potential. Liu Wang sorted out the information of Dream Company and then sent it to Su Weifeng, saying, Mr. Su, take a look at my work. Do you need to improve it? Su Weifeng looked at it, and suddenly his heart moved, and said, keep this and don't send it out. You send out the original situation of our company. Liu Wang was a little confused and said, I'm afraid that not many people will be interested in this. Su Weifeng narrowed his eyes, and smiled and said, someone will help us call people over. This. Liu Wang didn't understand Su Weifeng's approach at this time. Zhao Xiaoshu immediately said, brother Su asked you to do this. You just do it. It will never be wrong. Liu Wang said, oh, still confused. This kind of deliberate concealment of the strength of one's own company, no matter how you think about it, there is no need. In the afternoon, Su Weifeng brought Zhao Xiaoshu and Liu Wang to the art school together. The recruitment was scheduled to be held in the gymnasium, but as soon as we arrived at the gymnasium entrance, we saw many students rushing in, each holding a resume in their hands. Zhao Xiaoshu lowered his voice and said to Liu Wang, are there many people recruiting here today? Liu Wang said, it seems that we are the only one. I told the teacher yesterday that we will be recruiting this afternoon, and they said that today is not a formal job fair. There is only one company doing temporary recruitment like us. Zhao Xiaoshu said a little excitedly, it seems that your publicity is effective. So many people are here now. Liu Wang said with some concern, I don't think so. After all, the information we sent out does not show that our company is very attractive. After saying that, he glanced at Su Weifeng with a bit of resentment, not understanding what was going on in the mind of the CEO. Su Weifeng just smiled faintly and said, you'll know when you go in. After registering at the gate, Liu Wang asked, how many companies are hiring here today? Although the person in charge of registration was just a security guard, he had met many of them here, and was quite discerning. He said, 2, but they haven't arrived yet. Liu Wang suddenly became a little nervous. Could these applicants be targeting the other company? This was the first time she worked for Su Weifeng, and she wanted to perform well. If she messed up, it would affect her future. Su Weifeng smiled slightly and said, don't worry, let's go in and talk about it. The job fair was in a small hall in the gymnasium. At this time, there were already many students in it. There were 2 tables inside, which were reserved for the 2 companies to recruit. After Su Weifeng and his friends sat down at a table, the students immediately came over. Although there was no big background, the emerging video company was also a good choice. In addition, in terms of salary and benefits, Su Weifeng and his friends gave it a good salary, so it was still quite attractive to these students. Many people also submitted their resumes at this time. This made Liu Wang and Zhao Xiaoshu secretly relieved. Both of them were working for the first time, so they were not sure about it. But at this moment, a group of people walked in. The leader was Jin Yuhu. Haha. After sitting at the other table, Jin Yuhu turned around and looked at Su Weifeng, saying, you Dream Company came early. Thank you for helping me recruit so many people to Langhu Entertainment. Although Zhao Xiaoshu had never seen Jin Yuhu, he knew that the company's current difficulties were caused by this guy. He immediately turned around and glared at Jin Yuhu. Su Weifeng ignored Jin Yuhu. Jinyu, who was not angry, and said with a smile, "Are you scared because you feel guilty? Don't worry, I will let everyone join our Langhu entertainment soon." After saying that, Jinyu Hu stood up and said loudly, "Dear classmates, our Langhu entertainment company is also in Yangcheng, but we are affiliated with the Jin Group. The assets of the Jin Group exceed 2 billion. With such a strong endorsement, it is enough to show how good the future prospects of our Langhu company are. And I'm the heir of the Jin Group. After many years abroad, Langhu Entertainment is the first company I want to start. I must do this company well. As for the company's capital investment, I will temporarily invest 50 million in one go, and will add more in the future." When all the classmates heard what Jinyu Hu said, they hurriedly began to search on their mobile phones to see if what Jinyu Hu said was true. Jinyu Hu then said, "Besides, because we are a startup company, we are in urgent need of talents, and the salary and benefits we give to our employees will definitely not be lower than those of normal film and television companies. Those small video companies are naturally incomparable." Jinyu Hu was not bragging when he said these things, and before he came, he was obviously well prepared and put a lot of effort into the company's announcement. In addition, he also emphasized the introduction of Langhu Company in the head office, which was also an endorsement for this entertainment company. Compared with the simple qualifications of Dream Company, Langhu Entertainment has too many advantages. As a new company, everyone naturally chooses a stronger company to work for. But in an instant, there were only a few students left in front of Su Weifeng's table. Jinyu Hu then walked directly in front of Su Weifeng, sat on the table, looked down at Su Weifeng, and said, "Boy, it seems that it is not that easy for you to recruit people." Su Weifeng narrowed his eyes and said, "Do you think this is enough?" Jinyu Hu laughed and said, "Then what's wrong? I think as long as a smart person, he will naturally choose my company, right?" Su Weifeng laughed, looking very disdainful. Jinyu Hu was not annoyed, and said, "You didn't bet with me last time, so how about we bet on what happened today?" "Today? How to bet?" Jinyu Hu looked at the students next to him, and then said with a smile, "Let's bet on who can recruit more people. Of course, you will think that I'm bullying you. As long as you can recruit half of my people, you will win. What's the bet?" Su Weifeng asked slowly. "As for the bet, Humph, let's make it simple this time. Let's bet 10 million. Do you dare?" 10 million? Su Weifeng said with disdain. "Too little. I don't want to play with you." Jinyu Hu was stunned for a moment, then laughed and said, "Do you think this excuse is interesting? Then you mention a number, and see if I dare to agree." "Okay, 100 million. Su Weifeng said slowly. Jinyu Hu's face suddenly sank, and then he said slowly, "Okay, I'll bet 100 million with you." Chapter 492. It's too easy to win you. Liu Yang's heart was about to jump out of her chest when she heard this. The two of them had just exchanged 2 sentences, and the bet was 100 million. This was strength. People with ordinary strength would never have such courage. Su Weifeng suddenly smiled and said, "Thank you for giving me the money." Jinyu Hu sneered and said, "I thought so too, but I don't like to take shortcuts. To recruit people, you have to use the company's strength to recruit, and you can't recruit by increasing the salary and benefits. Otherwise, this thing won't work." Su Weifeng smiled faintly and said, "I won't do such an idiotic thing. You start a company to make money." Jinyu Hu snorted and said, "Then I want to see how you can snatch people from me now." Su Weifeng nodded and said, "Okay, then I'll show you." After that, he gestured to Liu Yang next to him. Liu Yang quickly understood what Su Weifeng meant, and was suddenly excited. She finally understood why Su Weifeng wanted her to hide the true strength of the company. It was obvious that he knew that some companies would come to snatch people and target them. If she revealed her cards too early, the other party would have targeted her in advance, and it would not be effective. After taking a deep breath, Liu Yang stood up and said loudly, "Classmates, please take your time to make a decision." Liu Yang's voice was loud and clear. In addition, many people knew her as they were students in the same school, and almost everyone looked over. Liu Yang said loudly again, "Classmates, I want to ask, do you know Mingyang Film and Entertainment Company?" Someone immediately agreed, "Of course I know. It is one of the top 10 film and television companies in our country." Liu Yang said again, "If you have the opportunity, to join Mingyang Film and Entertainment Company. Will you go? Of course I will. That's right, Mingyang Company has launched so many first-line stars. They have shot many big productions, so there are more opportunities. But what's the point of you saying this here? You are not Mingyang Film and Entertainment Company? Liu Wang puffed out his chest and said proudly, although we are not Mingyang Film and Entertainment Company. Just now, Mingyang Film and Entertainment Company invested 200 million in our company. What? This is impossible. This time, the first person to scream was Jin Yuhu. Jin Yuhu had of course investigated Su Weifeng's company a long time ago and knew that Mingyang Company had made the first round of investment in Su Weifeng's company. But that kind of investment does not really mean anything, and it does not mean that Dream Company is a subsidiary of Mingyang Company. But if Mingyang invested 200 million, it would mean something completely different. With such a large investment, it would be a wholly owned company of Mingyang. Liu Wang once again said loudly, you may not believe it. You can check it online now. Mingyang has issued an announcement, and our company has also issued one. Everyone picked up their phones to check, and then their expressions instantly became extremely exciting. Then, everyone rushed to Su Weifeng's desk. Even if Jin Yuhu's company is strong, there is a big group behind it, so funding is not a problem. But even if he is rich, he is not professional. Mingyang Film and Television Entertainment is a real professional film and television company. In their company, you can really have the opportunity to become a big star. Which company an artist signs with is definitely a top priority, not just a job. So in comparison, Jin Yuhu's company suddenly became unattractive. Now even if Su Weifeng's dream company has a lower salary, they will go to the dream company, not to mention that the salary of the dream company is not low. Liu Wang said again, everyone, take your time, line up. We will carefully screen your resumes and notify everyone within 3 days. Boss Jin, what should we do now? A person brought by Jin Yuhu asked absurdly at this time. Jin Yuhu's face was uncertain, and he looked at Su Weifeng fiercely, then suddenly laughed and said, Su Weifeng, I thought I had overestimated you, but now it seems that I still underestimated you. Very good, very good, you really make me more and more interested. Su Weifeng said lightly, I don't care whether you are interested or not, but you don't mind losing 100 million to me now? Jin Yuhu said viciously, it's just 100 million. Jin Yuhu, can afford to lose, but I will get it back with interest sooner or later. If you have the ability, I will accompany you at any time. Those who came to apply for the job didn't know about the bet just now. Now seeing Su Weifeng talking about the 100 million bet lightly, they have a better understanding of the strength of Su Weifeng, the boss. HMPH. Jin Yuhu snorted, swung his arm, and left with his people. He was in less than half an hour, and he was really in a hurry, but he left a gambling debt of 100 million. Liu Wang used his influence in the school to get the information of the dream company to the students in need. In addition to the seniors, the sophomores and juniors were also very interested in it. So the effect was better than Su Weifeng expected, and more than 300 resumes were received. When the recruitment was over, many people contacted Liu Wang to submit their resumes. Su Weifeng also asked Liu Wang to accept it. Now that the company has so much money, it must be bigger, so talent reserves are also necessary. After leaving the school, Su Weifeng said in a good mood, I'll treat you to a big dinner tonight. What do you want to eat? Liu Wang was immediately delighted and said hurriedly, I can do anything. Su Weifeng looked at Zhao Xiaoshu and said, what do you want to eat? Zhao Xiaoshu thought for a while and said, how about we have Western food? I haven't eaten it properly yet. Su Weifeng said, okay, I know a good Western restaurant. The Western food there is very authentic. Su Weifeng took the two to the Western restaurant in Zhu Xiaoxuan's house. He and Lin Zhuangxuan had eaten here last time, and were quite impressed. It was the first time for Zhao Xiaoshu and Liu Wang to eat such high-end Western food. They enjoyed it very much. Zhao Xiaoshu sat next to Su Weifeng naturally, and Liu Wang sat opposite Zhao Xiaoshu. Su Weifeng suddenly felt someone's eyes on him. He turned around and saw Qiao Yushan and Zhu Xiaoxuan walking in. Su Weifeng was just about to stand up, but Zhao Xiaoshu was talking happily with Liu Ying and casually put her arm around his, which made Su Weifeng suddenly embarrassed. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 493, Caught. Let go, my wife is here. Su Weifeng pushed Zhao Xiaoshu. Zhao Xiaoshu let go of Su Weifeng and jumped up like a frightened little rabbit. When he saw Qiao Yushan, his face turned pale, and he was speechless, unable to say a word. Qiao Yushan squinted at Zhao Xiaoshu and immediately recognized that this little girl was the writer who came to her house that day. Then she said to Su Weifeng, "You ran to the provincial capital without telling me." Su Weifeng said awkwardly, "I was in a hurry to do something. I knew you were busy at work, so I didn't go to find you. I was almost done today, so I thought about going to find you in the evening." Qiao Yushan said lightly, "Really? Don't be too hard. Take care of yourself." After that, Qiao Yushan walked straight inside. Zhu Xiaoxuan said to Su Weifeng, "Mr. Su, I'll go to accompany my sister-in-law first." Su Weifeng nodded, feeling even more embarrassed. Zhu Xiaoxuan and Qiao Yushan entered the innermost private room, and they were completely invisible from here. Zhao Xiaoshu sat down next to Su Weifeng and said with a pale face, "Brother Su, what should we do? What should we do now? What should we do?" Su Weifeng had calmed down at this time. His embarrassment just now was just a little surprise when he suddenly saw Qiao Yushan. Zhao Xiaoshu said worriedly, "When sister-in-law came over, I just happened to hold your arm. Will sister-in-law think too much? It's okay." Su Weifeng laughed and said, "Eat." Zhao Xiaoshu was in no mood to eat. His eyes were always looking at the direction where Qiao Yushan went in, fearing that Qiao Yushan would suddenly come out. Liu Ying was a little embarrassed. This was obviously a scene where the mistress followed the man out to eat and was caught by the wife. The wife of Su Weifeng who I met just now was really beautiful. Not only beautiful, but also very temperamental. Zhao Xiaoshu looked good, but compared with Qiao Yushan, she was still a little worse. Then she was a little confused. Su Weifeng already had such a good wife, why did he still look for Zhao Xiaoshu? Su Weifeng said at this time, "I'll go to Yushan's place to see. You guys eat here first." Zhao Xiaoshu hurriedly said, "Then you go quickly." It's okay, you guys eat your food. I'll be out in a while." Su Weifeng got up and walked over. Liu Ying immediately leaned over and asked in a low voice, "Xiaoshu, nothing will happen, right?" Zhao Xiaoshu smiled bitterly and said, "I don't know." Liu Ying frowned and said, "I don't understand a little bit. Didn't you say that Mr. Su's girlfriend's surname is Lin? How come this wife's surname is Qiao?" "Yes." Zhao Xiaoshu suddenly clapped his hands, and then his expression relaxed. "What's wrong?" Liu Ying was even more confused. Zhao Xiaoshu already showed a smile on his face and said, "Don't worry about these, it's okay, let's eat." Seeing that Zhao Xiaoshu didn't want to say anything, Liu Ying didn't want to ask more, but she couldn't figure it out in her heart. What kind of relationship is this? Su Weifeng entered the room of Qiao Yushan and Zhu Xiaoxuan. Qiao Yushan rolled her eyes at Su Weifeng and said, "Why don't you accompany your beautiful little writer to dinner? What are you doing here?" Su Weifeng chuckled and sat next to Qiao Yushan, saying, "You are my wife. How can I accompany someone else instead of my wife?" Zhu Xiaoxuan chuckled and said, "Brother Su, you are showing off your affection in front of a single dog like me. It's a bit too much." Qiao Yushan snorted and said, "Who is in love with this guy?" Su Weifeng smiled and said, "This time I came to the provincial capital. It is indeed urgent. Our company encountered some problems." Su Weifeng simply talked about the problems in the past few days, and then said, "If I hadn't been well prepared for this recruitment, I'm afraid that the people would have been snatched away again." Just now, everyone was a little excited, and the little girl made some unnecessary movements. Zhu Xiaoxuan frowned and said, "I haven't paid attention to the affairs of the Yangcheng family recently. The Jin family has not made any big moves in the past few years. I didn't expect that such a person would appear in the Jin family. They must feel that the Shu family is developing too fast and is about to shake their Jin family's position in Yangcheng. They have to do something. Su Weifeng smiled faintly and said, I'm not interested in this kind of struggle between families. If he wants to fight me, then I'll play with him. I've already won 100 million today. ZHU Xiaoxuan chuckled and said, Brother Su has never lost when it comes to betting to make money. I really don't understand why those people always want to give money to Brother Su. Qiao Yushan is now numb to the 100 million or 200 million. One reason is that she is now managing the head office with a larger asset scale, and the other is because Su Weifeng has done this several times. Su Weifeng smiled and said, maybe there are always people who think it's easy to beat me. ZHU Xiaoxuan shook his head gently and said, I feel sad for those who look down on Brother Su. After talking about some family matters, Qiao Yushan didn't pursue the matter between Su Weifeng and Zhao Xiaoshu. Su Weifeng also chatted with them about other things. When the dishes were served, Su Weifeng said, I'm still here tonight, Yushan. I'll come to your place tonight. Let's go back to Yangcheng together tomorrow. Qiao Yushan blushed and glared at Su Weifeng, saying, I don't know if I have anything tonight. Let's contact each other then. Su Weifeng nodded and turned to leave. Back to Zhao Xiaoshu, Su Weifeng ate something and then went back to the hotel with them. While Liu Ying was processing the recruitment resume, Zhao Xiaoshu and Su Weifeng came to another room. Brother Su, sister-in-law. Su Weifeng said, don't tell your sister-in-law about us. Only Zhuangxun, you and Dumeng know my true situation. Yushan doesn't know either. Ah. Sister-in-law doesn't know yet? Zhao Xiaoshu was surprised and then delighted. This means that her relationship with Su Weifeng is even better than that between Qiao Yushan and Su Weifeng. He quickly added, Brother Su, don't worry. I was too excited today. Sister Yumeng and I will be careful in the future. As long as anyone is around, we are all your sisters, and will never do anything out of line. It's embarrassing for you. Su Weifeng was a little embarrassed and apologetic at this time. Zhao Xiaoshu smiled and said, we are very happy now, and even Sister Zhuangxuan is the same. What else can we be dissatisfied with? Chapter 494 Is there a man in your family? Qiao Yushan returned to her residence. As the president of the head office, Qiao Yushan naturally enjoyed this level of treatment. In a high-end community, the company provided her with a house of more than 100 square meters. Sitting on the sofa in the living room, Qiao Yushan held her mobile phone, but she was a little entangled at this time. Although she had habitually returned to Su Weifeng's home, when she returned to Yangcheng, this was in the provincial capital. If Su Weifeng came over, it seemed that the meaning was completely different. WeChat on the mobile phone suddenly rang. It was a message from Su Weifeng. Are you done with your work? Qiao Yushan's face actually showed a hint of joy, but she immediately tensed her face and typed a word casually, yes. Then I'll go to your place. Qiao Yushan touched her red face and said, why are you coming to my place? I'll go back tomorrow. Haha, it's not very convenient to live in a hotel, and it can save some travel expenses. Your excuse is really lame. I haven't been to your place once. I'm your husband. If others know about this, it will obviously feel that I'm not doing my job as a husband. It seems to make some sense. Then come over. Qiao Yushan snorted in her heart. This excuse can at least make her agree. If it were any other excuse, she would be embarrassed to agree to Su Weifeng coming. After sending the address to Su Weifeng, Qiao Yushan felt a little panic. Why did this guy have to come to her house? He wouldn't want to do anything, right? But she was immediately amused by her ridiculous idea. If Su Weifeng wanted to do something to her, he could do it at any time. So why did he have to come to her house? Not long after, Su Weifeng came to her house. Get your slippers yourself. Qiao Yushan opened the door and turned around and walked in. Su Weifeng took out slippers from the shoe cabinet, put them on, walked in, looked around, and said, not bad. The treatment of the president of the head office is different. Qiao Yushan sat down on the sofa and said, don't say sarcastic words. No matter how good it is here, it's not as good as home. Su Weifeng smiled and said, that's good. A nest of gold or silver is not as good as your own doghouse. As he spoke, He sat down next to Qiao Yushan and picked up 2 grapes on the table and ate them. Qiao Yushan rolled her eyes at Su Weifeng and said, "How can you call your home a doghouse?" Su Weifeng chuckled and said, "I was just making an analogy to show that you can be casual at home. I feel a little restrained here. If I were at home, I would definitely not be so disciplined. Do whatever you want. I'm not talking about you. I don't have time to deal with you. I still have a lot of things to do. If you're tired, go to bed first." After saying that, Qiao Yushan got up and went to the study room, closing the door and leaving Su Weifeng alone. Su Weifeng didn't take it seriously and got up to look around. Although the house is not small, it has 3 bedrooms and 2 living rooms. But one bedroom has been turned into a study and the other bedroom has been turned into a cloakroom. Only one room can really be lived in. It was really late now, so Su Weifeng went directly to the bathroom. After taking a shower, he couldn't find a new towel. There happened to be a bath towel, which should be Qiao Yushan's, so he took it and wiped the water stains on his body. As soon as he came out of the bathroom, Qiao Yushan came over. When she saw the towel in Su Weifeng's hand, she frowned and glared at him, saying, "What are you doing with my towel? I can't find any other." Su Weifeng smiled and raised the towel, saying, "I'll help you wash it now. Forget it, wait until I'm done, and then wash it together." Qiao Yushan took a step inside, then frowned again and said, "Aren't you going to change your underwear?" Su Weifeng shrugged his shoulders and said, "I didn't bring any." Qiao Yushan said, "There are some in the cabinet on the left side of the cloakroom. Go find them and change them, and then give me the ones you've changed, and I'll wash them for you." Su Weifeng's face suddenly turned black, and he said, "What will yours look like if I put them on? I might as well not wear them." "Who said it's mine? It's men's." Qiao Yushan glared at Su Weifeng. "Men's? You have men's here." Su Weifeng's face suddenly turned black. Qiao Yushan raised her chin and said, "Can't I have a man here? It's not that I can't, but..." Su Weifeng was speechless for a moment, but he did feel quite uncomfortable in his heart. Looking at Su Weifeng's dark face, Qiao Yushan snorted and said, "I just bought 2 for you out of habit when I bought underwear for myself. Hurry up and change, don't dawdle." Su Weifeng's gloomy face suddenly untied, and he hurried into the cloakroom. Qiao Yushan's voice came from behind again, "Don't rummage through my clothes. Yours is on the second layer of the cabinet on the left." Su Weifeng agreed, went to open the cabinet, and soon found his underwear. Moreover, here, there was not only his underwear, but also a set of silk pajamas. Obviously, it was brand new, and had never been used. He changed his clothes in the cloakroom, put on the pajamas, and then came to the door of the bathroom. The sound of water was heard in the bathroom, and Qiao Yushan had already started to take a shower. Su Weifeng knocked on the bathroom door. As soon as the sound of water stopped, Qiao Yushan opened the door a crack, stretched out her hand, and said, "Give it to me." Su Weifeng stuffed the clothes he had changed into Qiao Yushan's hand. Sitting back in the living room, Su Weifeng looked at the glass door of the bathroom. He couldn't see inside the door, but it made him feel a little confused. Usually when he was at home with Qiao Yushan, even if he really saw Qiao Yushan taking a shower inside, his reaction was very calm. But today, he was actually ready to do something bad. Shaking his head gently, Su Weifeng knew that he was no longer so restrained in recent days, so his views and feelings about women were very different from before. In the past, he could face beauty without any dirty thoughts, but now all kinds of messy thoughts have come. Oh, no. Su Weifeng took a deep breath and quickly stopped himself from thinking. Facing others, Su Weifeng said that it was to restore his strength, which was acceptable. But with Qiao Yushan, he couldn't do that. Qiao Yushan and Lin Zhuangxuan are cousins. He can't have both, otherwise it would be considered chaotic. Cough cough. Now that he likes Lin Zhuangxuan so much, he has to restrain himself towards Qiao Yushan and can't be so casual anymore. Otherwise, if something really happens in the future, how will these two sisters face it? And how will their families face it? Chapter 495. The feeling of a husband and wife. After a long while, Qiao Yushan opened the bathroom door, already wearing pajamas. "Come and help me hang the clothes on the balcony." Su Weifeng agreed and hurried over. Qiao Yushan handed over a basin, in which were several close-fitting clothes, some of Su Weifeng's and some of Qiao Yushan's. Su Weifeng took it, and hung the clothes one by one on the clothes drying rack on the balcony. There was a wonderful feeling in his heart. He and Qiao Yushan were like living a married life. The wife washed the clothes and the husband helped hang the clothes. Both of them did it very naturally. This feeling made Su Weifeng feel indescribably comfortable. Back in the living room, Qiao Yushan had already come out, wiping her wet hair with a towel. Su Weifeng smiled and said, "Let me help you." Qiao Yushan nodded and said, "Well, let's go to the cloakroom." Qiao Yushan sat in front of the dressing table in the cloakroom, picked up a bottle of lotion, poured a little into her palm, and gently patted her face. Su Weifeng stood behind her, rubbing her hair with a towel. "Your skin is very good, so you don't need to put on makeup at night, right? I remember that you rarely put on makeup when you were at home." Qiao Yushan said, "I've been staying up late recently, so my complexion is not very good. I have to go to work tomorrow, so I have to maintain a sufficient spirit. It is also necessary to replenish water at night." Su Weifeng immediately said, "I will give you a massage later. I guarantee that it will be more effective than using these cosmetics." Qiao Yushan said, "Of course it's good, but you are not by my side every day, otherwise I would not want to use these cosmetics. With this time, I can do more things." Su Weifeng had already wiped Qiao Yushan's hair half dry, and began to press his fingers on Qiao Yushan's head. He said with some heartache, "That's right, I can't take care of you every day." Qiao Yushan chuckled and said, "Or, come here, I will arrange a position for you, and you can take care of me every day." Su Weifeng chuckled and said, "It's not impossible." Qiao Yushan looked at Su Weifeng's face in the mirror, then glared at him in reproach, saying, "Men's words are really unreliable. You promised to do something, when you clearly couldn't do it." Su Weifeng was embarrassed by Qiao Yushan's words and said, "I thought you were joking, so I just cooperated with you." Humph. Qiao Yushan rolled her eyes at Su Weifeng in reproach. This look was not consistent with her usual personality. It was a bit like Lin Xuanxuan's look when she was in a bad mood. After pressing a few more times, Su Weifeng said, "Let's go back to the bedroom and go to bed." "What are you going to do in the bedroom? What bad things do you want to do?" Qiao Yushan stared at Su Weifeng in the mirror with a vigilant look. Su Weifeng couldn't help but smile and said, "It's hard to say. You have to be careful. Maybe I will do something bad." "You dare?" Qiao Yushan glared at Su Weifeng again, then got up and walked directly to the living room and sat down. Su Weifeng followed and said with a smile, "What's the matter? Are you really afraid of me going to bed with you?" Qiao Yushan said unhappily, "Don't go to bed. It sounds awkward. Massage my face. I think it might be more appropriate to do it on the sofa." Su Weifeng nodded and said, "What you said really makes sense." As he said that, Su Weifeng sat on the sofa near the armrest. Qiao Yushan immediately lay down and rested her head on Su Weifeng's thigh. Su Weifeng took the silk scarf and wiped Qiao Yushan's face again, and then started to massage Qiao Yushan. Qiao Yushan closed her eyes and said, "You have a good relationship with that beautiful writer." Su Weifeng smiled and said, "The girl works very hard. Her first work was adapted into an online movie. She has great potential in the future." Qiao Yushan snorted and said, "Don't beat around the bush. I said she has a good relationship with you in private. You don't want to have something happen with her, do you?" Su Weifeng touched Qiao Yushan's face. This was definitely not a massage, but simply taking advantage of her. He said, "I have a beautiful wife like you, and I can do whatever I want to her. Why should I go out and find one? Don't give me that." Qiao Yushan was taken advantage of, but she didn't care. She said, "I'm not your real wife. Besides, when did you ever do whatever you want to me? You'd better not have this idea." Su Weifeng laughed and said, "Our marriage certificate can be checked at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Normally, you are my legal wife now. As your husband, of course I have the power to do that." "What?" Qiao Yushan sat up suddenly, turned around, widened her eyes, looked at Su Weifeng, and said, "So you mean, this marriage certificate is valid?" Su Weifeng nodded affirmatively and said, "Of course it is valid. Didn't you say this is fake? You lied to me." Qiao Yushan frowned. Su Weifeng chuckled and said, "Look how scared you are. I said it's effective. but it's only effective to a certain extent. If I want to fake it, I have to make it look real. Of course, our marriage can be cancelled. After the cancellation, we won't have any record of being married. Qiao Yushan breathed a sigh of relief, then rolled her eyes at Su Weifeng again, and once again lay on Su Weifeng's legs, saying, "You scared me. I thought I was really tricked into marriage by you." Su Weifeng laughed and said, "Just cheat me. I'm so wise and brave, and I won't let you down. Puchy." Qiao Yushan burst into laughter, raised her hand, and twisted Su Weifeng's leg, saying, "You guy, I haven't seen you for a few days, but you're getting more and more shameless." After making a few jokes, Qiao Yushan picked up her phone and looked at the information in it. Su Weifeng pressed her face, and seeing that she was serious, he didn't disturb her, and pressed her head gently again. "Give me 2 grapes to eat," Qiao Yushan said. Su Weifeng immediately leaned forward to take the fruit plate, then pinched a grape and put it into Qiao Yushan's mouth. He fed her one grape after another, and Qiao Yushan ate it very naturally. Neither of them spoke, but this made Su Weifeng feel a special warmth, and he was actually a little intoxicated. When Su Weifeng fed her grapes again, I don't know if Su Weifeng was distracted or Qiao Yushan was distracted, Su Weifeng's fingers went directly into her mouth. Qiao Yushan actually bit it lightly and then sucked it. Su Weifeng's mind was shocked, and he instantly entered that wonderful state. Qiao Yushan suddenly realized what was in her mouth and was about to pull Su Weifeng's hand away, but she subconsciously glanced at Su Weifeng, and then her face turned black. "This bastard, you actually did this at this time. Do you want me to keep biting your fingers? Disgusting. Disgusting bastard." Chapter 496. Heartbroken. But Qiao Yushan could only maintain this posture. After all, this involved Su Weifeng's physical recovery, which was definitely a big deal, and could not be affected by her. Besides, although this posture was a little embarrassing, it seemed nothing. And the posture she was lying in was very comfortable, so she would not feel tired. She simply ignored Su Weifeng, held up her phone, and continued to deal with her own affairs. With this concentration, her other movements were unconscious. With something in her mouth, she instinctively touched it gently with her tongue from time to time, and even sucked it from time to time like a pacifier in her mouth when she was a child. Even though Su Weifeng had entered that state, his mind was mostly on the true key in his body, but he could still feel Qiao Yushan's movements to some extent. Although this movement was very small, Su Weifeng clearly felt that after he entered the state this time, it was somewhat different from the previous one. In the past, it was just a wave, from high to low, and finally slowly calmed down. But this time, it was the strongest at the beginning, and then it gradually decreased. However, there was a little repetition in the process, and there was another strengthening situation. Although it was not very strong, it was definitely a new change. Su Weifeng naturally attached great importance to his recovery. Even if it was a slight change, he would immediately remember it in his mind and analyze it in detail later. Finally, it was over. Su Weifeng gently pulled out his finger. Qiao Yushan hurriedly bit it lightly, and when she looked up and saw that Su Weifeng had opened his eyes, she loosened her teeth. "Okay?" Qiao Yushan asked with her head tilted up. Su Weifeng smiled slightly and said, "Thank you." Qiao Yushan also smiled slightly and said, "Why are you being polite to me? I'm also proud to be able to help you." Su Weifeng nodded and said, "I'll think about some more questions." "Well, you think about yours," Qiao Yushan said, and turned her eyes to her mobile phone again, and did not get up from Su Weifeng's legs. Su Weifeng closed his eyes and thought carefully about what happened just now. The subtle changes in his previous experience should be related to Qiao Yushan's small movements at that time. Recalling the previous situation, basically when Su Weifeng had such a strange reaction, everyone was afraid of affecting him, so they kept a posture. Even if there was any movement, they were afraid of affecting Su Weifeng, and they were deliberately careful. But this time, Qiao Yushan's posture was very convenient, and she was very dedicated to her work. Her small movement was made unintentionally, which was completely a natural manifestation. So, Su Weifeng roughly came to a conclusion That is, when that state is produced, if you can continue to maintain intimacy and have some stimulating small movements, it will be beneficial to the improvement of the state. After figuring it all out, Su Weifeng opened his eyes. When he lowered his head, he saw Qiao Yushan's cheeks were full of pink and her breathing was disordered. And his hand was on Qiao Yushan's face at this time. Seeing this situation, it must be that he was too devoted to thinking just now, and then his hand subconsciously touched Qiao Yushan's face. And his touch obviously made Qiao Yushan have such a reaction. Probably sensing Su Weifeng's gaze, Qiao Yushan opened her eyes, then immediately closed them again shyly, flustered like a little girl. Su Weifeng felt an indescribable warmth in his heart, and gently stroked her again, saying, "It's getting late, let's go to rest." Qiao Yushan responded, then stood up and sat up. But just halfway up, her body swayed, and she lay down again. Su Weifeng quickly supported her and said, "What's wrong?" Qiao Yushan glanced at Su Weifeng. Nothing. She sat up quickly, so she couldn't say that Su Weifeng's touch made her a little weak. Su Weifeng was not as inexperienced as Qiao Yushan, and he couldn't let Qiao Yushan lose face, so he pretended that nothing had happened. When Qiao Yushan entered the bedroom, he got up and followed her in. Lying on the bed, the two kept a distance between them, and the atmosphere was somewhat awkward. Su Weifeng took the initiative to bring up the topic, saying, "This bed is quite comfortable." Qiao Yushan said, "It's okay. I was a little uncomfortable the first 2 days, but after living here for a few days, I got used to it." Su Weifeng smiled and said, "Are you not used to going home?" Qiao Yushan rolled her eyes at Su Weifeng and said, "It's still more comfortable at home." "Ah, that's right, that's home. That's right, no matter how good it is outside, it's not home." At this point, Qiao Yushan suddenly became quiet. "What's wrong?" Su Weifeng asked in confusion. Qiao Yushan shook her head gently and said, "Nothing, go to bed, I have to get up early tomorrow." Qiao Yushan's mood suddenly became a little messy today. She didn't care too much about it before, but now she realized that in her heart, she has increasingly regarded Su Weifeng's villa as her own home. In addition, when she gets along with Su Weifeng, she is now more and more casual, and she feels that she seems to be getting deeper and deeper. Not long after, she heard Su Weifeng's long breathing, and knew that this guy had fallen asleep. After sleeping in the same bed for a while, she got to know Su Weifeng better and better. This bastard, he can fall asleep just by saying he wants to. Qiao Yushan complained in her heart. Then she turned her head slightly and squinted her eyes to look at Su Weifeng's profile. As she looked at him, Qiao Yushan was actually a little dazed, and she couldn't help but move slightly to Su Weifeng's side. Then she gently hugged Su Weifeng's chest and leaned her head on Su Weifeng's shoulder. An indescribable feeling came over her heart, and she felt sleepy immediately. She yawned and fell asleep while hugging Su Weifeng. When she woke up the next morning, Qiao Yushan once again felt Su Weifeng's evil hand. Qiao Yushan complained in her heart, "This bastard, he doesn't dare when he's awake, and he's never honest when he's asleep." But she didn't care, and even felt that it seemed quite comfortable. Su Weifeng's breathing was quite normal, and she knew he was still sleeping. She looked at the time, and knew that he could lie down for a while, so she closed her eyes, and didn't pull Su Weifeng's evil hand out. Bastard. But soon, Qiao Yushan felt that she seemed to have made a wrong decision. This bastard's hand was not only placed there, but also moved from time to time, which made her a little overwhelmed. Chapter 497, Villains in Power. This was not the first time, so after Su Weifeng woke up, he took his hand away. Qiao Yushan secretly complained in her heart, "This bastard, now he is so comfortable with taking advantage." But she couldn't take the initiative to pursue this matter, so she could only treat it as nothing. Su Weifeng was not at ease either, but he really didn't know how to explain it. This kind of thing seemed to make things worse, so it was better not to say anything. After a simple breakfast, Su Weifeng and Qiao Yushan agreed to take the high-speed rail back to Yangcheng together in the evening. In the morning, Su Weifeng took Zhao Zhaoshu and prepared to visit Zheng Yulan and Zhao Mingyang's company. Jin Yu, who poached many partners of Su Weifeng's company 2 days ago. But these partners were actually small companies found when the company was just starting out. There were no real strong companies, and their influence on their company was not great at all. Then Su Weifeng directly found Zheng Yulang and Zhao Mingyang. Their companies can also have a certain influence in the province. Cooperating with them can get more resources. As soon as he arrived at the hotel lobby, a man came up to him with a smug smile on his face. Su Weifeng remembered this man. He was Liu Yangxin, a former classmate of Lin Zhuangxin, and also Lin Zhuangxin's pursuer. The last time he and Lin Zhuangxin came to the provincial capital, they had an unpleasant encounter with Liu Yangxin, which made Liu Yangxin very embarrassed. Su Weifeng, what a coincidence, I actually met you here again. Liu Yangxin stood in front of Su Weifeng, with a stronger smile on his face, but this smile was not kind. It was obviously excited, the kind of expectant smile that wanted to see Su Weifeng laugh. Su Weifeng said lightly, it's indeed a coincidence. Liu Yangxin raised his chin and said, first, let me introduce myself. I'm now the vice president of Huacheng Film and Television. I think you are familiar with Huacheng, right? As soon as he heard the name of the company, Su Weifeng knew why Liu Yangxin was like this. Huacheng is also a film and television company, not too big or small, with assets of about 50 million. It had some cooperation with Su Weifeng's company some time ago, but it terminated the cooperation with him 2 days ago. It turned out to be Vice President Liu. That's really disrespectful. Su Weifeng showed a faint smile on his face. Since he wanted to show off in front of him, he should cooperate with him, otherwise he would be too disappointed. Liu Yangxin laughed and said jokingly, I don't dare to accept it. President Su is a big shot. How could he take a small person like me seriously, don't you think? Su Weifeng suddenly nodded and said seriously, indeed, I really don't take you seriously. Zhao Xiaoshu thought Su Weifeng had met a friend, and was waiting for Su Weifeng to introduce her in a proper manner. The previous words sounded normal, but Su Weifeng's last sentence was directly overturned, and Zhao Xiaoshu's mind was confused for a long time. The smile on Liu Yangxin's face froze, and she felt very uncomfortable. He was thinking of talking normally, and then suddenly said, what qualifications do you have to talk to me now? And then deliberately disgusted Su Weifeng. But Su Weifeng actually took the initiative and directly snatched his show. It was like sneezing, and then someone blocked your mouth. Don't mention how uncomfortable it was. His face quickly turned angry, and he shook his head vigorously. Then he glared and shouted, boy, our company has cancelled the cooperation with your company, and as far as I know, there will be more companies cancelling cooperation with your company. With your company's size, without the support of big companies like us, how can you survive? What qualifications do you have to pretend to be cool with me here? Su Weifeng still had a serious face, looking up and down at Liu Yangxin, without saying a word. Liu Yangxin sneered, trying his best to take the initiative, and said, what? Nothing to say? Otherwise, you beg me, maybe I will consider giving you another chance. I'm now the vice president of Huacheng. I can give you some odd jobs and let your company survive? Su Weifeng suddenly nodded at this time. Liu Yangxin laughed out loud, then frowned and said, I can give you a life, but I have a condition. You shout here 3 times, I'm a dog, and I'll give it to you. Zhao Xiaoshu's face suddenly darkened. This guy actually humiliated Su Weifeng like this. He was simply a bastard. At this time, Su Weifeng said to Zhao Xiaoshu, according to my appraisal, this is definitely an idiot. Xiaoshu, tell me, have you ever seen such an idiot before? Zhao Xiaoshu immediately shook his head vigorously and said with certainty, it was not until I met this person that I knew what an idiot is. Liu Yangxin immediately shouted with a gloomy face, Su Weifeng, you are still trying to argue with me and offend me. I'm afraid that no one in your company will have the opportunity to cooperate with you again. Su Weifeng sighed and said, I'm really wondering now, is the president of Huacheng crazy? Liu Yangxin immediately shouted, you are very brave. You even dare to scold our president. Su Weifeng shook his head and said, I'm not scolding him. I sympathize with him. He hired an idiot like you as the vice president. If he is not crazy, what else can he be? Zhao Xiaoshu immediately said, that's right. If you use this kind of person as the vice president, you might as well bankrupt your own company. Very good. Very good. You actually said that about our CEO. Liu Yangson suddenly smiled sinisterly, raised his phone, and said, I have recorded your insults to our CEO. You will never have the chance to cooperate with Hua Cheng again. Haha. At this point, Liu Yangson's eyes lit up, and he said, what a coincidence. Our CEO is here. Ha. The CEO of Hua Cheng is Liu Yufeng. When he saw Liu Yangson and Su Weifeng talking, he frowned and hurried over. CEO Liu. Liu Yangson greeted him and half bowed. Liu Yufeng nodded, then said to Su Weifeng somewhat awkwardly, Mr. Su, I'm really sorry. This time, I have no choice. Su Weifeng smiled slightly, nodded and said, I understand. Liu Yufeng breathed a sigh of relief and said, thank you very much, Mr. Su. Mr. Su, please settle this matter as soon as possible. I still hope to continue to cooperate with Mr. Su. Liu Yangson didn't expect that the boss would be so polite to Su Weifeng. He was very unhappy and said, Mr. Liu, this Su Weifeng is not a good person. He was scolding you just now. I recorded it for you. You listen. After pressing the play button on the mobile phone, Liu Yangson immediately looked at Su Weifeng proudly. Chapter 498. This is not on the same level. I'm really confused now. Is the CEO of Hua Cheng crazy? You are so brave that you dare to scold our CEO. I'm not scolding him. I sympathize with him. He hired a fool like you as the vice president. If he is not crazy, what else can he be? The voices of Su Weifeng and Liu Yangson came from the phone. But Liu Yangson didn't see any panic on Su Weifeng's face. However, Liu Yufeng's face suddenly became extremely ugly. Liu Yangson immediately continued, Boss Liu, this Su Weifeng is so arrogant. He doesn't even take you seriously and scolds you. It's so hateful. Liu Yufeng's mouth twitched, and he gritted his teeth and said, he is right. Why did I find a fool like you to be the vice president? What? Liu Yangson's eyes widened immediately. Liu Yufeng snorted and said, from now on, you are no longer the vice president of our company. Get out of my sight immediately. Boss Liu, why are you? Liu Yangson was about to cry. How could a person like Liu Yangson know about Su Weifeng's background? But Liu Yufeng knew something about it. The Liu family in the province asked him to break off the cooperation with Su Weifeng, and he had to do it, but he didn't want to offend Su Weifeng. So he stopped the cooperation, and he didn't want to hurt the relationship. If Liu Yangson did this, it would not be a complete breakup, and he might really offend Su Weifeng. If Su Weifeng retaliated, his company couldn't afford it. A company of their size is not big or small, and the background is not strong enough. It is almost surviving in the cracks, and it is not so glorious at all. He simply can't afford to offend these big families. If he can't get along with both sides, he has to not offend any of them. Standing in line is really not what they should do. So Liu Yangson's behavior really pissed off Liu Yufeng, and he kicked Liu Yangson's thigh fiercely, angrily. Get out right now. The kick was very heavy, and Liu Yangson staggered and almost fell to the ground. Obviously, he knew that Liu Yufeng was really angry, but what he couldn't figure out was, what did he do wrong? At this moment, two people walked over quickly. Brother Su. The two people came to Su Weifeng and greeted him. Then Liu Yangson saw his boss Liu Yufeng bending over and saying to the two young men with a flattering expression, hello, Mr. Zheng. Hello, Mr. Zhao. Liu Yangson's face suddenly turned black, and he suddenly remembered who the two young men were. He suddenly realized that he had really hit the nail on the head this time. Zhao Mingyang and Zheng Yulan were not people that their boss could afford to offend, and these two actually had a very good relationship with Su Weifeng. He thought that Su Weifeng would be miserable without the cooperation of their Hua Cheng. But now it seems that their Hua Cheng is not important in Su Weifeng's eyes. It can even be said that if Hua Cheng does not cooperate with Su Weifeng, there will be a lot of losses in the future. Zhao Mingyang and Zheng Yulan just nodded to Liu Yufeng and then left with Su Weifeng and Zhao Xiaoshu. Liu Yangson then came to Liu Yufeng and said with a bitter face, Boss Liu, Liu Yufeng sighed and said helplessly, Liu Yangson, you are so confused. Liu Yangson said awkwardly, I didn't expect that guy to have such a big background. Liu Feng said unhappily. You are so stupid. Do you think the Liu family will do anything to a small company in Yangcheng? This shows that they are absolutely qualified to let the Liu family do it, and we are definitely not qualified enough. Alas, Zhao Mingyang and Zheng Yulang will definitely have a very bad impression of us this time. Our future cooperation with their two companies will be greatly affected. You ruined my big plan. Liu Yangsen's mouth twitched. Although he was a little unconvinced and didn't believe that Su Weifeng would have such great ability, he now understood that he couldn't stay in Huacheng. Su Weifeng looked at Zheng Yulang and Zhao Mingyang's companies, and then several people sat together to discuss future cooperation. However, everyone could only preliminarily come up with a direction for cooperation and profit distribution. As for the specific details, they couldn't talk about it. It's not that they don't have power, but Zheng Yulang and Zhao Mingyang don't care about interests at all. As long as Su Weifeng brings it up, they will agree unconditionally. So Su Weifeng didn't bother to talk to them about these things. He just asked the three parties to send representatives and then conduct some normal negotiations. Su Weifeng said with a straight face, I understand your thoughts, but when you send representatives, it's better not to give too many instructions, otherwise our cooperation will not be possible at all. Zhao Mingyang and Zheng Yulang both laughed. If Su Weifeng didn't mention it, they would definitely do so. Su Weifeng said again, doing business has to be done in a business-like manner. Only when the cooperation is normal can I call you brothers. Zheng Yulang and Zhao Mingyang put away their laughter at this time and nodded seriously in agreement. After finishing the business, Zheng Yulang said with a smile, let's go out and have some fun tonight. I have a few good little stars here. Let's go have a few drinks together. Zhao Mingyang quickly poked Zheng Yulang. Zheng Yulang glanced at Zhao Xiaoshu and suddenly felt that he had said something wrong. He chuckled and said, Xiaoshu, I don't mean anything else. Don't think too much. Zhao Xiaoshu's face flushed all of a sudden. Of course, she could understand what Zheng Yulang meant. What made her most happy was that a man like Zheng Yulang actually explained it to her. Doesn't that mean that Zheng Yulang has already regarded her as Su Weifeng's woman? With a red face, Zhao Xiaoshu said hurriedly, it's okay, it's okay. If you want to play, just go and play. Su Weifeng laughed and scolded, you two, you just want to drag me down. How come there are little stars in your company, but there are no beauties in my company? Zheng Yulang saw that Zhao Xiaoshu didn't mind, and Su Weifeng didn't mean to blame her. He smiled and said, it's not that home flowers are not as fragrant as wildflowers. Zhao Mingyang also saw that he could joke, and said, this rabbit doesn't eat grass near the burrow. People in your own company must have a lot of things to do, but people outside are much more casual. You don't have to think so much. Zhao Xiaoshu pouted and said, so there is such a saying. You men really know how to play. Su Weifeng laughed, held her little hand, and said, I'm not a bastard like them. I still think home flowers are more fragrant. Chapter 499. Close our relationship. Su Weifeng and Zhao Xiaoshu waited for Qiao Yushan at the high-speed railway station. Zhao Xiaoshu still felt a lot of pressure in front of Qiao Yushan. After saying hello, he stood obediently behind Su Weifeng. Qiao Yushan managed her time very well. She basically didn't have to wait for a long time before checking her ticket and getting on the train. She didn't buy the ticket in advance, so there was no business class seat, but only a second class seat. The three of them were just sitting in a row. After getting on the train, Zhao Xiaoshu took the initiative to go to the innermost seat, and then Qiao Yushan sat in the middle, and Su Weifeng sat next to the aisle. This position is still a bit particular, and the middle seat is definitely the most uncomfortable. But among the three people, Su Weifeng can't sit in the middle. That would be hugging left and right, which would make Qiao Yushan unhappy. She can't sit in the middle. That would separate Su Weifeng and Qiao Yushan. Wouldn't she become a third party? So she took the initiative to sit in the middle so that there would be no such problem. Qiao Yushan sat down and nodded to Zhao Xiaoshu, obviously very satisfied with the girl's understanding. After the car started, Su Weifeng and Qiao Yushan had a brief chat. Then Qiao Yushan turned to Zhao Xiaoshu and said, Xiaoshu, your family won't have any opinions about you going on a business trip alone with your CEO Su, right? Zhao Xiaoshu hurriedly said, sister-in-law, my parents are dead, and I'm the only one at home now. I'm renting a house with Yumeng now. Qiao Yushan was immediately surprised and said, oh, I'm so sorry, what a poor child. Zhao Xiaoshu smiled and said, sister-in-law, it's okay. It's been a few years, and I've adapted to it. And now I can support myself. CEO Lin and CEO Su have given me such a good opportunity, and I'm very happy every day. Qiao Yushan said again, you are really an optimistic and motivated person. Zhao Xiaoshu's smile became even brighter, and he said, I feel that my future is bright now, thanks to CEO Lin and CEO Su. Qiao Yushan smiled slightly and said, this guy didn't bully you, did he? If he wants to bully you, just tell me, and I will definitely take care of him. Zhao Xiaoshu pouted and said, brother Su always likes to put on a stern face in front of me. I'm a little afraid of him. Stern face? How come I didn't notice it? Qiao Yushan turned her head and looked at Su Weifeng. Zhao Xiaoshu stuck out her tongue and said, of course he can't have a stern face in front of you, sister-in-law. In front of me and Yumeng, she always looks very serious. Qiao Yushan turned her head and rolled her eyes at Su Weifeng, saying, why do you always have a stern face? Su Weifeng had to admire Zhao Xiaoshu's words. Although he didn't explain anything, it indirectly showed that Su Weifeng always paid attention to the degree in front of other girls. She chuckled and said, I have to maintain the dignity of a boss. There are so many young girls in our company. If I'm too easygoing and don't show some dignity, what if the girls come to me to talk for no reason? Qiao Yushan chuckled and said, you are really shameless, but what you said makes sense. Zhao Xiaoshu smiled and said, but brother Su only has more contact with me and Yumeng in the company. Brother Su doesn't have much contact with other people. Qiao Yushan said, Xiaoshu, you have to keep an eye on him more in the future. If he wants to do something bad, tell me. Okay, I will listen to my sister-in-law. Zhao Xiaoshu puffed out his chest. Su Weifeng shook his head and said, you little traitor. Zhao Xiaoshu stuck out his tongue again and said, brother Su, don't blame me. I think it's more useful for my sister-in-law to protect me than for you to protect me. Qiao Yushan laughed out loud, then looked at Su Weifeng proudly and said, Xiaoshu is right, what do you think? Su Weifeng rolled his eyes and said, can I say it's wrong? How long have you known each other? You actually sold me out like this. It's so miserable for a man. Qiao Yushan and Zhao Xiaoshu immediately giggled happily. Then it seemed that the relationship between the two of them quickly became much closer. Zhao Xiaoshu is a very smart girl, and her acting skills can only be said to be average. If she feels guilty now, it will definitely be easy to reveal her true colors. But her relationship with Su Weifeng was permitted by Lin Zhuangsun, and it was for Su Weifeng's recovery. The most important point was that she knew that Su Weifeng's marriage with Qiao Yushan was also fake, so no one could really be with Su Weifeng, so she didn't have that kind of burden in her heart. When she was relaxed, she was much more calm when talking about Su Weifeng's affairs. Even if she was hiding it from Qiao Yushan at this time, it was just as natural. Qiao Yushan was the only one who had not really communicated with Lin Zhuangsun and the others, so she had no idea that Zhao Xiaoshu actually had such a mentality. As a boss, she was still very sharp in her eyes, but she didn't see any problems with Zhao Xiaoshu, so she naturally thought that Zhao Xiaoshu really had nothing to do with Su Weifeng. Zhao Xiaoshu deliberately tried to please Qiao Yushan, and she was a smart and well-behaved girl, so she soon really got Qiao Yushan's approval. Zhao Xiaoshu took the initiative to say, sister-in-law, Yumeng and I stayed at your house a few times recently without telling you in advance. You won't blame us, right? Qiao Yushan said, just go. We have many rooms in our house, and they are usually empty. If you come, it will be more lively. I heard from Zhuangsun that your cooking is very delicious. I also tried it last time. Zhao Xiaoshu smiled and said, I don't have that ability. It's all Yumeng's cooking. The two chatted very speculatively, and Su Weifeng couldn't get a word in, so he simply picked up his phone to deal with some things. When they got home, the smell of food was already wafting out. Lin Zhuangsun chuckled and said, you're back at the right time. Come, try my cooking. Your cooking? Qiao Yushan snorted and said, it smells so good. Either my aunt is here, or Yumeng is here, right? Lin Zhuangxuan said helplessly, "You're so boring. You exposed me so quickly. You should give me some face." At this time, Sun Yumeng came out of the kitchen with a plate and said, "Hello, sister-in-law. I'm here to disturb you again." Qiao Yushan smiled and said, "You came to my house to cook for me, so I have to thank you. What do you mean by disturbing me or not?" Lin Zhuangxuan said, "Go and clean up. Dinner will be served soon. After dinner, we'll play mahjong." When everyone finished dinner, Su Weifeng actually thought of a Chinese Odyssey starring Stephen Chow. 4 women were playing mahjong together, and he was just a waiter. He had no status in the family at all. Chapter 500, 100 million account. Who says women don't like to play? Who says women don't like to gamble? These 4 beautiful women were having a blast. Even Sun Yumeng and Zhao Xiaoshu were having a lot of fun. After waiting for them to play, Su Weifeng went straight to the gym. He hadn't exercised in the past 2 days, so he had to make up for it when he had time. After Su Weifeng finished his exercise, it was already past 11 o'clock, and these women were still having fun. Su Weifeng said something to them, and then went back to the bedroom. It was almost 1 o'clock when Qiao Yushan returned to the bedroom. She moved very cautiously, probably because she was afraid of disturbing Su Weifeng's rest. Su Weifeng called her directly, and she moved normally. After taking a shower and getting on the bed, Qiao Yushan said, "Yumeng and Xiaoshu are really good girls." Su Weifeng smiled and said, "Just because they play mahjong with you, you think they are good? Of course not. When playing mahjong, you can also see a person's character. They are very serious when playing cards, and take every card seriously. Both of them are the kind of people who are serious and focused. In addition, when the cards are not good, they can always hold back and not be anxious or irritated. This also shows that when they do things, they can also hold their strength and will not give up easily." Su Weifeng couldn't help but widen his eyes and said, "Why do I feel that gamblers are like this?" Qiao Yushan hit Su Weifeng and said angrily, "What nonsense are you talking about? How can we be gamblers? We are just playing casually." "Humph, telling you this is really talking to a cow. Go to sleep." Qiao Yushan was tired from playing today and fell asleep in a short while lying on the bed. The next day, Su Weifeng took Qiao Yushan back to his parents' home. If his parents don't come now, they can't help but go back to see their parents. This is also what Qiao Yushan must do every week when she comes back. This also makes Su Weifeng sometimes think that Qiao Yushan is like this now. Isn't she becoming more and more like a real daughter-in-law and more integrated into the family? But no matter what, this is not a bad thing. Let's just let it go. In the afternoon, Qiao Yushan accompanied Chenji to go shopping. Su Weifeng returned to the company, and Lin Zhuangxuan and others also came. "Today, we have to screen those resumes again, and then notify the people who need to be interviewed one by one, and let them come to the company for interviews tomorrow." The interviewees come to the company, which is also for them to understand the company's situation, and they will be better able to decide whether to stay and work. After a long time of busy work, these things were finally done, and then Liu Ying also came that night. Zhao Xiaoshu went to pick up Liu Ying and arranged for her to stay in a hotel near the company. This time Liu Ying is also a hero. Even if she will come to work in the company soon, she should be treated like this. In these matters, Lin Zhuangxuan and others are still the main force, and Su Weifeng took the time to come to the gym downstairs again. Just after doing some warm-up exercises, Feng Bao ran over. She must have been practicing for a while. Her face was covered in sweat, and her clothes were soaked, but these clothes were not afraid of getting wet, and they were not transparent. "Finally I see you again." Feng Bao seemed excited and a little agitated. Su Weifeng said lightly, "Are you so excited to see me?" "Yeah, after you helped me last time, I rested for a few days, and when I practiced again, the effect was much better than before. I believe that it won't be long before I will become very strong." Su Weifeng snorted and said, "Don't think it's too easy. This kind of training method will become more and more difficult as time goes on. Too many people give up halfway." Feng Bao puffed out her chest and said, "I will never give up. If I give up, I will be supported by you." Su Weifeng couldn't help but face darkening and said, "Your way of swearing is really Feng Baoer smiled awkwardly and said, "Don't worry, I will never let you down." Su Weifeng shrugged and said, "You are not practicing for me, I'm just scared of you." Feng Baoer smiled and said, "No matter what, I'm very grateful to you." As the two were talking, Jinyu, who came over with a few people, looked at Feng Baoer and then said with a smile, "Su Weifeng, your girl is pretty good, let her stay with me for 2 days, you can name the conditions." Before Su Weifeng could speak, Feng Baoer glared at him and shouted, "Boy, shut your stinky mouth." Jinyu, who narrowed his eyes and said, "This girl is quite attractive, with a better figure, just what I want." Su Weifeng, you name the conditions. Su Weifeng said lightly, "Jinyu, who, you haven't given me your 100 million yet." "Oh, am I, Jinyu, who, the kind of person who admits defeat? It's just 100 million, I'll give it to you now." As he spoke, Jinyu, who threw a banknote directly to Su Weifeng. Su Weifeng did not take it. Feng Baoer took a look and did not recognize what kind of money it was. But seeing the long string of numbers on it, her face suddenly turned black and she said, "Is this ghost money?" Jinyu, who shook her head and pointed, saying, "Beauty, how can I give ghost money? This is money, real money." A person brought by Jinyu, who laughed and said, "Ha, look, this is 100 million, not a penny wrong, absolutely real money. Ha, I guess they don't recognize such a big money. Let me tell you a piece of knowledge, Zimbabwe dollar, now you know it." Su Weifeng looked at Jinyu, who shook his head and said, "I originally thought of you, Jinyu, who, as a big shot, but I didn't expect you to use such a method to default on your debt. It seems that I still overestimated you." Jinyu, who said with a smile, "Su Weifeng, your provocation is useless. When we made the bet, you didn't say what currency it was, right? You just said the number. Is it okay for me to give you this?" Su Weifeng snorted and said, "Do you feel particularly happy to default on my debt like this?" Jinyu, who laughed and said, "Not bad, I'm very happy. You think you won a lot from me, but this 100 million Zimbabwean dollars is not even worth $1. Haha." The other people also laughed. Feng Baoer's face was dark. He didn't understand the ins and outs of the matter, but he could feel that when these two guys bet 100 million, at least they were talking about normal local currency. This Su Weifeng and that guy really dared to gamble. Isn't this Su Weifeng the boss of a small company? He has such strength. As for Jinyu, who using a Zimbabwean dollar to fool around, Feng Baoer was also quite disdainful. A real man, a spit is a nail. This kind of man who directly regrets and does not keep his word is what she despises the most. At this time, Su Weifeng said lightly, "Unfortunately, there is really no one who can default on my debt, and your debt can't be denied either." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.